Chapter 1563. In the end, it was too unexpected. Dijiang couldn't figure out why the Demon Emperor's star, who represented the Great Saint, would die. What exactly happened? The Great Saint died in Lin Feng's hands? How was that possible? Impossible. Dijiang instantly denied it. From what he knew, the Great Saint and Lin Feng were too weak. Even he wasn't confident that he could win against the Great Saint at his peak. The Great Saint was the most powerful being in the history of the Demon Clan, the most terrifyingly talented expert. In terms of talent, he even surpassed the 3,000 demon gods. That was why he set up this trap. However, he couldn't react in time. It was as if he was struck by lightning. Ha! Ha ha! Dijiang laughed. There was a hint of mockery in his laughter. He was speechless and kept shaking his head. Even he couldn't explain what he was feeling. He felt like he had set up a trap for no reason. In the end, he realized that he had been fooled by the heavens. The Great Saint, the demon commander, the strongest demon clan, died just like that? Killed by a mere human? What a joke. Although only one of the two emperors died, it couldn't be the Demon Emperor who died. After a long time, interesting. Too interesting. Dijiang laughed out loud without any scruples. His laughter echoed in the entire Ancestor Magi Palace. His voice was so loud that it seemed like a water source that had been blocked for a long time suddenly burst out. Dijiang's laughter was indescribably joyful. Although the development of the situation was unexpected and could even be said to be completely out of control. What did he lose? What did the Wizard clan lose? Nothing at all. The Great Saint's death gave him a lot of energy to reflect on himself. Very good. Lin Feng, well done. Dijiang's eyes flashed with a cold killing intent. He sneered, well done. You helped me solve a big problem. To thank you, I'll leave your corpse intact. Wanton arrogance. To Dijiang, no one in the Douling world could stop him now that the Great Saint was dead. Lin Feng? Naturally, he wouldn't let them live, and he would use the fastest speed to exterminate them. Today, Lin Feng could kill the Great Saint, and he might be able to do the same in the future. Dijiang would never be soft-hearted. Either he wouldn't do it, or he would be straightforward and cut the weeds to the roots. Lin Feng, wait for me. Dijiang's eyes flashed, and his voice was bone-chilling. What happened? What was going on with the battle between Lin Feng and the Great Sage? Was the Great Sage really dead? You won? Lin Feng stood there in a daze, his entire being a little dazed. He couldn't believe that he had won just like that. However, the Great Sage in front of him really had no aura left, and had been destroyed in body and soul. It was as if a war god had fallen. His sturdy body seemed to have been refined from steel. Even though he had died, there was not the slightest bit of damage. There was not even a trace of blood on his body. However, his widened eyes were dim and had lost all luster. The Great Sage was indeed dead. Just as the star that represented the Demon Emperor had fallen, the Great Sage's death had become a reality. I actually won? Lin Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Fate made fools of people. He had only wanted to stall for time, and he had only wanted to die together so that his doppelganger and mother could safely escape. He had never thought that he could defeat the Great Sage, let alone defeat him face to face. This was a mission that he had thought was completely impossible, but now he had inexplicably accomplished it. His eyes flashing, Lin Feng looked forward, and his eyes were a little dazed. Just now, ah! Roar! The Great Sage's furious voice still echoed in his ears. He was hysterical and furious like an injured beast. His eyes were red and blood could even seep out. There was no doubt about the power of Pengu's eye. Even if it was only 30% of his soul power, it was still much, much stronger than the previous 50%. However, this was still not enough to kill the Great Sage. Lin Feng was very clear about this. As a heavenly soul master, how could he not understand the strength of his enemy's soul? Although he had used up a lot of soul power to fuse with the heavenly treasure, the great sage's remaining soul power was at least on the same level as his. Otherwise, how could he have fused with such a powerful heavenly treasure? His talent was already extraordinary, and the great sage had definitely entered the fifth layer of the Demon Emperor Island. In terms of soul power, the great sage was not inferior to any expert in the Doling world. Moreover, his vermilion bird attack had only injured the great sage. Even if it was an all-out attack, he had only wanted to delay the great sage so that his doppelganger and mother could successfully escape. Lin Feng's eyes blurred, and the scenes of the previous battle appeared in his mind. Now that he had calmed down, every detail and every scene of the battle was like a replay, slowly appearing in front of his eyes. It was incomparably clear. 31%, 32%. Lin Feng gritted his teeth so hard that blood came out. He had completely gone crazy. The first vermilion bird attack, which contained 30% of soul power, was blasted out. Taking advantage of the fact that there was no reaction, he quickly followed up with a second vermilion bird attack. He was fighting without any regard for his life. He was going all out, and the terrifying soul power caused the entire palace to collapse. His soul power had already condensed into a physical form. How powerful and terrifying was that? The fiery red vermilion bird was like a blood-stained phoenix as it charged forward. It was as resolute as Lin Feng's will as it charged straight into the depths of the great sage's soul. There was no way to block it. When a heavenly soul master was determined to destroy everything, whether it was a heavenly soul master or a heavenly soul master, it was difficult to resist this terrifying power. A direct attack from the soul. It was an unreasonable fighting style and a desperate attack. Roar! Roar! The great sage was hysterical, and his face was deathly pale. Even if his soul power was far stronger than Lin Feng's, fusing with the earth pillar consumed a lot of soul power. He hadn't had time to recover yet, so he couldn't display his original strength in this battle. All he could do was defend. His soul felt like it was being torn apart and the pain was shocking. However, this was not the end. Lin Feng's third soul attack came. Vermilion bird assault. Lin Feng was throwing caution to the wind. It was as if he had squeezed every last bit of soul power out of his body. Panguzai, 33% of his soul power. All of his soul power was poured into this attack. 3 soul attacks, a total of 95% of his soul power. If not for the vermilion bird assault, just the reaction force alone would have been enough to kill Lin Feng several times over. A heavenly soul master's attacks were completely unreasonable, and there was no way to block them. Only the soul could fight in the most direct way possible. And the great sage did manage to block it. Even if he was exhausted, even if he was on the verge of collapse, the great sage's soul power was still a level higher than Lin Feng's. His body trembled violently, but he stood tall and proud. His eyes seemed to spit fire, but he was still standing. I lost, Lin Feng murmured softly. The scene in his mind was very clear. At that time, he had used up a lot of soul power, and his attention was focused on the battle, so he did not notice it. But now he could clearly see that even if he used all of his soul power in his last attack, he was still unable to kill the great sage. There were pros and cons. Although the vermilion bird assault did not have any reaction force, its attack power was still inferior to the attacks of other heavenly soul masters. There were pros and cons. Soul power attacks consumed a lot of soul power. When the attack entered the body of another martial artist, it would consume a lot of soul power. And when the attack was inside the martial artist's body, it would also consume a lot of soul power. In addition, soul attacks did not have the geographical advantage, so the heavenly soul master's attack was actually an attack with a lower level of soul power. Even if he used the vermilion bird assault 3 times in a row and used up 95% of his soul power, at most, I could only heavily injure him, Lin Feng thought to himself as he nodded his head. Strength was definitely not enough to kill the great sage. But then, what happened? Whoosh! Light shone. Lin Feng's eyes widened. It was the earth pillar. The light of the earth pillar. When the earth pillar shone, the great sage's expression suddenly changed. His entire body trembled, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. His hands, which were holding onto the earth pillar, were trembling violently. Upon closer inspection, it was as if there was a suction force that was firmly holding onto his hands. This was backlash? Lin Feng was greatly shaken. He was overwhelmed with shock. The earth pillar's backlash? That's right. He was not seeing things. Lin Feng felt his mouth go dry. Light flashed in his hand, and another sparkling and translucent astral fruit fell into his stomach. These extremely precious astral fruits contained a lot of energy, and they replenished his soul power. Although they could not replenish his soul power, at least his soul power could be maintained at a normal state, and he would not faint. Whoosh! Whoosh! Scene after scene appeared in front of his eyes. Lin Feng pursed his lips. He confirmed it once again. He was not seeing things. The great sage had indeed died from the earth pillar's backlash. He was wronged. More than wronged, it was laughable. He had expended a tremendous amount of effort to fuse with the heavenly treasure, and in the end, he had achieved a perfect fusion. But it was like raising a wolf, and in the end, he had died in the mouth of the wolf. Laughable, lamentable, but this was reality, and it was often unexpected. A forcibly picked melon is not sweet. It never belonged to you because you are a Yao. Lin Feng stood in front of the great sage and sighed. He bent down and picked up the earth pillar, which had lost its luster. He held it in his hand, and it seemed heavy. He was not afraid of this thing that had devoured its master. There was no need for him to be afraid. The great sage's death could only be blamed on his own carelessness and negligence. He did not understand the origins of the earth pillar. These 3 heavenly treasures were the last remnants of the 12 ancestral shamans' power. How could Pangu's treasures be used by Yao? Even if it had submitted to the great sage's power, it would have been nothing more than waiting for an opportunity to strike. Under his continuous soul attacks, the great sage's soul power had been greatly depleted. At this moment, the earth pillar had taken advantage of his weakness to deliver the final and most fatal blow to the great sage. It was as if he had been stabbed by the person closest to him. It was an unjust death, but it was fated. What a pity! Lin Feng looked at the great sage's corpse and sighed softly. It was indeed lamentable that such a powerful person had died in such a way. However, the winner was always right, and the loser was always in the wrong. The one who died today was either him or Lin Feng. Clearly, Lin Feng's luck was much better than his. Farewell. Lin Feng turned and left. He was lucky enough to keep his life. It was a great gain for him. The golden and dazzling hall had now turned into ruins. An icy cold corpse quietly lay within the ruins. It was lonely and cold, just like a graveyard. However, what Lin Feng didn't know was that after he left, a gray light flashed across the eyes of the supposedly dead great saint. His hanging hands clenched into fists with a pop. Chapter 1564. It was an unexpected gain. The heavenly treasure, earth pillar. Lin Feng burst into laughter, but he also felt that fate was playing tricks on him. He thought that he would definitely die by sacrificing himself. Who would have thought that the great sage would die from the backlash of the earth pillar? On the other hand, he saved his life and even obtained a heavenly treasure. That day, the battle for the earth pillar could be said to be an abyss of suffering. Many experts died there. He also witnessed the appearance of the earth pillar with his own eyes. However, he did not have the strength to fight for it, so he chose to give up. He did not expect that after going around in circles, the earth pillar would fall into his hands in the end. However, it was fated. No one could snatch what was his. After I return, I'll see if I can fuse with it. Lin Feng's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. Logically speaking, the earth pillar had just been tamed and fused with it. It had consumed a lot of energy, so he should be able to save a lot of effort. As for the backlash, he did not have to worry about it at all. The great sage was devoured by the earth pillar because of his bloodline. The magi and the demons were on opposite side. Weapons had spirits, let alone heavenly treasures. How could they be used by the enemy? However, he was different. Not only did he have Pangu's bloodline, but he also had Pangu's eye. It was impossible for the earth pillar technique to devour him. He was very confident about that. However, that was all in the future. He still had one more thing to do. Two Extreme Emperors formation. He returned to the Two Extreme Emperors formation. After all, Lin Feng had a certain understanding of array formations. Coupled with the fact that he had entered it once, it did not take long for him to find the path of two extremes. Although he had consumed a lot of soul power, he had recovered a lot after some nourishment. Pangu's eye shone brightly, and the illusion could not get close. I haven't found it yet. Lin Feng closed his eyes and shared his vision with the puppet. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Mother was right. On the other side of the gate of two extremes is indeed the headquarters of the demons. To be precise, it should be a treasure trove. It was quite rich and could be said to have everything. Rare inner cores, blood essence, all kinds of rare ores, and so on. With the bad nature of the demons, they would not search for them themselves. These were clearly spoils of war. Priceless. Just from what he had seen, it was already impossible to measure it with money. After all, this is the loot from the first great war of the liches and demons. Back then, the Douling world was still in the developing era, so there were naturally many more precious items than there are now, Lin Feng said softly with satisfaction. Even if he did not find the Star Origin Stone, he had already profited greatly from this batch of spoils of war. The treasury was huge, but the spoils of war were scattered and piled up like small hills. What a waste! Lin Feng shook his head. The demon race did not intend to use these spoils of war at all. They just casually piled them up. Indeed, the monster race did not have the ability to use these heaven-sent treasures. In the world of the monster race, there was only fighting, plundering, and conquering. Even if they had cultivated into a human form and possessed consciousness, the blood flowing in their bodies was still that of wild beasts. His nature would not change. There's no rush. Take your time. Lin Feng smiled calmly. Since the great sage was dead, there was no longer an existence that could threaten him. He could take his time and even explore the other layers of the Demon Emperor Island. Even if he was determined to wipe out the entire Demon Emperor Island, it was not impossible. However, it was not worth it to do so. It would harm others without benefiting himself, and it would only benefit the wizard race. The great sage's death had great implications. The after effects are quite troublesome. Now that the great sage is dead, who else can restrain Wizard Emperor Jiang? Lin Feng frowned slightly. The situation was clear. As the great sage went into seclusion, the wizard race launched a counterattack. Under the leadership of Wizard Emperor Jiang, they were aggressive. On the other hand, the monster race was retreating. Anyone with eyes could see that the four emperors of the monster race were no match for Wizard Emperor Jiang. It was only a matter of time before the wizard race took back the situation. Now that the great sage was dead, it was one disaster after another for the monster race. Wizard Emperor Jiang was no longer restrained. What a headache! Lin Feng felt helpless. The complexity of the war troubled him because the southern region was now in an awkward situation. They had offended both the wizard race and the monster race at the same time, and they were caught in the middle. If not for the fact that the southern region now had a certain level of strength, and that the wizard race and the monster race were wary of each other, the southern region would have been razed to the ground. We'll talk about it later. Go back and discuss it with Shun. Lin Feng nodded. Even if the great sage's death greatly damaged the monster race's vitality, the monster race had a strong foundation, and the wizard race would not be one-sided in a short time. He still had enough time. Wizard Race Realm. Wizard Emperor Jiang was in a good mood. Although he did not know how the great sage died, it was not important. What was important was that it saved a lot of effort. Originally, he was a little afraid of eliminating a powerful enemy like the great sage. Although the success rate was more than 80% in his opinion, there was still a 20% chance of failure. But now it was a 100% success. Lin Feng had done him a great favor. Pass down the order. Spread the news quickly. Emperor Jiang's eyes were bright as he shouted. Yes, Wizard Emperor. Wizard King Gomang accepted the order and left. Jiuyin, this is the best chance for you to establish your prestige. You must not miss it. Emperor Jiang looked at Shi Jiuyin, his voice burning. Once the news spreads, the monster race's morale will plummet, and their morale will plummet. The commander's death not only leaves them without a leader, but also a heavy blow to their morale. This time, I want the monster race to suffer a crushing defeat. Shi Jiuyin's eyes glimmered and he bowed. Many thanks, Wizard Emperor. The two experts were no longer enemies. Ever since he learned of Wizard Emperor Jiang's intentions, Shi Jiuyin had cooperated actively to prepare for his ascension to the throne a year later. Moreover, Emperor Jiang did not lie to him. He was indeed grooming him as his successor. Otherwise, how could he have gotten such a great opportunity? The four emperors' injuries varied, and the monster race's army was defeated one after another. Adding this shocking news to the monster race, it was like adding fuel to the fire. The fire was strong enough to burn them to death. Go, make good use of this opportunity. Emperor Jiang waved his hand. Yes. Shi Jiuyin cupped his fists and retreated, his eyes shining with confidence. Soon, in the spacious ancestral Magus Hall, only Emperor Jiang was left. Looking at the majestic statues of the 12 ancestral magi, Emperor Jiang's eyes glimmered, and a rare smile appeared on his face. God bless the witch race. This opportunity was a heaven-sent opportunity for the witch race. Pull one hair and the whole body would be affected, hitting a dog when it's down. He had absolute confidence that before he broke through the void and left the battle spirit world, he could beat the monster race back to the sea, establishing the winning theme of this war of the witch race. The third war of the witch race would be the last. Only our witch race is qualified to be the true master of the battle spirit world. Emperor Jiang spread his arms wide, roaring at the sky. His arrogance reached the clouds, and Emperor Jiang was full of confidence. His voice reverberated in the ancestral Magus Hall, but as if he sensed something, Emperor Jiang exclaimed in surprise and raised his head to look at the starry sky. In an instant, that pair of confident eyes revealed astonishment, which then turned into shock. His smile froze. This. Emperor Jiang was stunned. Looking at the vast starry sky, he was dumbfounded. Following his gaze, he saw that the great Saint Star, which represented the existence of the monster emperor, was covered by a layer of gray fog, flashing with gray light. Although it was dim, it was glowing and gradually becoming stronger, as if it had come back to life after death. Bizarre. It was extremely bizarre. The star that had already fallen and lost its life force was now glowing with radiance again. It was like a candle that had been blown out. No one had touched it, but when they turned around, they suddenly realized that the candle had started to burn again. How strange was that? How could this be? Emperor Jiang's chest rose and fell rapidly, but he was caught off guard by this sudden change. He had observed the stars for a long time, but he had never seen such a scene. A star was like a life, but now it looked like it had come back to life. It was too baffling. What shocked him the most was that the monster emperor's star was glowing with gray light, and its aura was getting stronger and stronger, as if dark clouds were covering the starry sky. Covering the sky with one hand. Although the gray light was dim, it did not mean that its power was weak, and even it's stronger than before. Emperor Jiang took a deep breath, but he could not explain what had happened. Why did the great saint come back to life? Why did his power become even more terrifying? Why did the star seem to have been reborn and changed so drastically? It no longer had the aura of a monster emperor, but its power was not inferior. The battle for the monster emperor of the Douling world had officially come to an end, but the battle to become the real master of the Douling world had just begun. Monster Emperor Island, the 6th level. The dignified, flourishing, and dazzling palace within the restrictions had already transformed into a pile of ruins. With the strength of Lin Feng and the Great Saint, how could a mere palace withstand the top combat power of the Douling world? If it were not for the special material, not to mention turning into ruins, it would have disappeared from the world. At this moment, the only corpse lying quietly in the ruins slowly sat up as though it was coming back to life. It was extremely shocking. If Lin Feng saw it at this moment, he would definitely be shocked. He had witnessed the death of the great saint with his own eyes. His consciousness had disappeared, and his aura had completely disappeared. However, at this moment the great saint had come back to life, eerily, but his aura had completely changed. His awe-inspiring aura had disappeared without a trace, and the golden light had turned into a faint gray color, as if it was hidden in the darkness. However, his power seemed to be stronger than before. Pa! Pa! Clenching his fists, the great saint slowly got up with a terrifying aura. Dense gray energy covered his entire body, and he was filled with the terrifying feeling of death. His eyes, especially, were like those of a devil, cold and ruthless, revealing a murderous glint. Chapter 1565. Pa! Lin Feng's eyes widened instantly. The structure of Demon Emperor Island could be seen from the inside out, but not from the outside in. Even though he was in the dual extreme Emperor's array, Lin Feng could clearly sense the changes in the outside world, especially the palace that was close at hand. A terrifying aura gradually rose, and the terrifying energy directly awakened Lin Feng, who was in the dual extreme Emperor's array. Too strong. Who is it? Lin Feng was shocked. He couldn't guess who had such a terrifying power that was even stronger than the great sage that he had just killed. Closing his eyes, Lin Feng pursed his lips tightly and sensed the surrounding environment. He probed with his aura and fell into a deep state of silence. Very familiar. A very familiar power. It's the gray energy. Lin Feng opened his eyes and was shocked. This energy was the opposite of the life force. It was the terrifying power that existed in the cemetery, the energy emitted by the world-destroying demon god. It wasn't the first time he saw it, and he had touched it countless times. It was too familiar. But why would the gray energy appear here? Also, who had this gray energy? Could it be? No, it can't be him. Lin Feng immediately denied it. The world-destroying demon god that was silent in the deepest part of the cemetery couldn't suddenly appear. Moreover, although the gray energy that he sensed was strong, it was still far from the power of the world-destroying demon god. It's slightly stronger than the great sage that fought with me previously. Lin Feng nodded secretly. Wait, great sage. Lin Feng's eyes widened, and his chest rose and fell violently. It can't be, right? A possibility appeared in his mind, and his body couldn't help but tremble slightly. How can it not be? He didn't leave the restriction at all, and he had carefully probed the palace before. There was no one there. In addition, there weren't many demon clan experts that could enter the 6th level of Demon Emperor Island. Even if someone wanted to enter the palace, how could he not sense it? The only possibility was, Great Sage. The great sage that died in the ruins of the palace. Gray energy, death aura. Lin Feng bit his lips and clenched his fists. He might not know about other things, but the energy of death was the true energy of death. It was not a delusion that it could revive the dead. He had seen it with his own eyes in the graveyard, and even the shield of reality was currently nurturing those dead experts. If they could come back to life, why couldn't the great sage? It was difficult for him to understand the uniqueness of the Grey Death energy. Phew! Lin Feng let out a long sigh. His eyes were focused as he pondered. Very surprised. However, if he thought about it carefully, it might not be a bad thing. What harm would it do to him? The great sage shouldn't be able to sense me within the restriction. After all, the consciousness brought about by the grey energy is of a murderous nature. It's not very intelligent. Although the power is strong, it can obliterate a cultivator's consciousness and turn them into killing machines. Lin Feng nodded slowly and murmured. There were pros and cons, and the death energy also had a huge drawback. As long as Refined Puppet finds the Astral Origin Stone and brings it out, I can immediately leave the Dual Extreme Monarch formation. By then, I'll be free to fly. What can the Great Sage do to me? The corners of Lin Feng's lips curled up as he said softly, with the Supreme Sage restraining which King Jiang, the war of the witches and demons will not be one-sided. The more intense the battle, the more opportunities the southern region will have to take advantage of it, just like Tian Ling during the first war of the witches and demons. When the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. Lin Feng was very clear that the southern region needed enough time and space to slowly grow. And the key was balance. Fast. Although Lin Feng was not worried that the great sage would find him, it was better to stay in this dangerous place for as long as possible. One had to know that his main body was already at the end of its rope. During the battle with the great sage, he had used up 95% of his soul power. If not for the countless astral fruits he had collected on the 5th and 6th levels of Demon Emperor Island, he would not even be able to wake up, let alone stand here safe and sound. The soul was the foundation of a cultivator. When the soul was destroyed, the cultivator would die. This was the case for the great sage's death. His body, which was born from the essence of heaven and earth, was not damaged at all, but his consciousness had been destroyed and swallowed by the earth pillar. No. I haven't found it yet. Sharing Refining Puppet's vision, Lin Feng was also quite anxious. The treasure vault in the Gate of Two Extremes was also quite big. It was connected by one array formation after another, and it was very complicated. Refining Puppet had already entered at least a dozen areas, but it had repeated many times, and it was looking for the pattern. It had to be said that Refining Puppet was indeed smart. Although it had not found all the patterns, it had discovered many mysteries after passing through more than a dozen areas, saving a lot of time. It was just that its luck was not good. It still had not found the Astral Origin Stone treasure that its mother had mentioned. The treasure vault was too big. The foundation of the demon race was far deeper than he had imagined. However, he believed that he would soon find something after a thorough search of the area, because here, there was everything. But many times, things that you thought would not happen would actually happen. Whoosh! The Two Extreme Emperor's formation shook slightly, but it was very weak. It was as faint as a leaf, but it was this small movement that made Lin Feng's eyes widen. His heart seemed to stop beating instantly. What did this mean? Someone had entered the Two Extreme Emperor's formation. Who? Hiss! Lin Feng took a deep breath, and his expression changed. The identity of the newcomer was obvious. At this time, at this place, there was only one possibility for someone to appear in the Two Extreme Emperor's formation, the Great Sage. Why is he here? Lin Feng's expression changed greatly. Was it a coincidence? Or was he just passing by, looking for a way out? The thought flashed through his mind. Lin Feng held his breath and tried his best to hide his aura, even though he knew it was useless. If the great sage really wanted to investigate with his strength, there was no way he could hide from his senses. The only thing he could hope for was that he was just passing by, leaving the palace. But could it be so coincidental? Whoosh! The surging aura caused the two extreme emperors' formation to shake violently. There was no need to think about it. Just by looking, one could guess what had happened. Lin Feng's face turned pale. He couldn't understand how the great sage had discovered him. Even if he used his aura to investigate, it would take time. At the very least, Lin Feng could sense him. But it was as if the great sage had seen him. He didn't stop at all. The moment he entered the two extreme emperors' formation, he rushed towards Lin Feng. What was going on? Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He suddenly saw the shield of reality and understood. I understand now. It's the energy of death. Lin Feng's expression was ugly. He finally understood. Energy attracted each other. The shield of reality was no longer an ordinary heavenly treasure. It was an existence filled with dense energy of death, just like its own kind. The great sage immediately sensed the shield of reality. In other words, his target wasn't Lin Feng. But what was the difference? With the gray energy as the main force, the great sage has become a killing machine. Lin Feng frowned. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Once the great sage found him, he wouldn't let Lin Feng go. He would kill Lin Feng quickly, not to mention whether or not he would steal the shield of reality. Lin Feng was no match for the great sage even when he was at his peak, let alone when he was just an arrow at the end of its flight. The difference was too great. Once the great sage found him, Lin Feng would die. Damn it! Lin Feng gritted his teeth and looked at the path of two extremes. Lian Ho hadn't found the astral origin stone yet. If he took Lian Ho away, all his efforts would be in vain. Could he bear to do that? Even if I don't want to, I have to. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Where there's life, there's hope. He still had a chance next time. After making up his mind, Lin Feng closed his eyes and prepared to leave with Lian Ho before the great sage arrived. But rejected? Lin Feng was slightly startled. He was a little confused, but the message in his mind shocked him. Whoosh! Through a large light door, Lin Feng shared Lian Ho's vision. Lin Feng's eyes widened. His breathing became rapid. In front of him was a huge treasury. It was piled up like a mountain. It was as tall as two people. It wasn't shaman coins. It had an even stronger energy. It was starry sky level energy. Astral origin stone, Lin Feng exclaimed. He was speechless. He didn't expect to see so many astral origin stones. Real astral origin stones. He didn't need to look to estimate the value of this small mountain. If it was converted to shaman coins, it would be worth more than 100 billion. Taking a deep breath, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He was extremely excited. Lian Ho didn't even need his order. Lian Ho had already collected the astral origin stones at the fastest speed and put them into the storage ring. It didn't hesitate at all. It was wise, decisive, and meticulous. Very good. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He couldn't stop praising Lian Ho's performance. This time, if he could leave safely and restart the Netherworld ship, Lian Ho would be the main contributor. Even he was shocked to find so many astral origin stones. However, Lian Ho didn't even waste a second. The moment it entered the treasury, it had already started collecting the stones. It was extremely fast. It's here. Lin Feng's eyes brightened. He looked behind him. The terrifying energy was getting stronger and stronger. It shocked his soul. It was so strong that he couldn't resist it. 3, 2, 1. Lin Feng counted in his mind. He counted every second. He shared Lian Ho's progress. At this moment, it had collected more than half of the astral origin stones in the treasury. It was enough. Come back! Lin Feng shouted. Instantly, Lian Ho's energy shook. He sensed it immediately. This time, Lian Ho didn't refuse. Although it didn't collect all the astral origin stones, more than half was enough. Swoosh! A gray-colored aura was approaching at an extremely fast speed. Lin Feng could even see the full appearance of him. It was the great saint who came back from the dead. However, what was revealed in those eyes was a gray and dark killing intent. He was no longer the original great saint. Goodbye, Lin Feng said indifferently. His eyes flashed. His body slowly disappeared like an illusion. He was summoned by his doppelganger and left Demon Emperor Island. Continue. There are still 27 hours before New Year's Day. I don't know how much I can update. I'll give you 3,000 first. I'll make sure to give you at least 10,000. Chapter 1566. Return. To Lin Feng, this could be said to be a walk on the edge of death. It was extremely dangerous. Whether it was the battle with the great sage when he first entered the forbidden land of the demon clan, or the first time he met the world-exterminating demon god in the graveyard, he was in great danger. Then, the battle with the great sage who was connected to the earth pillar was even more dangerous. If the great sage had not been careless and died from the earth pillar's backlash, his original body would have been turned into dust. Of course, the rewards were also great. Putting aside the fact that his soul had transformed into the Pangu Eye, which had greatly increased the strength of his main body, just the fact that he had saved his mother made this trip worthwhile. Not to mention that he had seen through the conspiracy of the demon race, obtained countless dead experts, and gained the greatest reward, Star Origin Stones. A sufficient amount of Star Origin Stones. Is it enough, Feng? Jiayuzhu looked at him from the side, her eyes filled with anxiety. She had worked so hard and fought for so long just to see this. At this moment, Lin Feng was patiently counting the Star Origin Stones that Lien Feng brought back. Hearing his mother's question, he turned and smiled, giving her a thumbs up. This simple action made Jiayuzhu feel relieved, and she heaved a sigh of relief. It was more than enough. It was more than enough. Soon, Lin Feng finished counting. From head to toe, he had a smile on his face. He was very satisfied. Lien Feng deserved the credit. Although they had only obtained about half of the Star Origin Stones in the entire treasure trove, the amount of Star Origin Stones they had obtained was already quite terrifying. If they were to convert it into shaman coins, then the value of the half of Star Origin Stones they had obtained would be over 70 billion shaman coins. And how many shaman coins were needed to restart the Netherworld ship? 47 billion shaman coins. Lin Feng looked at his mother and said a number. Jiayuzhu's eyes lit up, and her chest rose and fell slightly. She calmed herself down and her beautiful eyes flickered. So, Xiaotian can be revived? I don't know yet, but I can restart the Netherworld ship and wake Toto up. Lin Feng said calmly and smiled. I believe that with Toto's ability and the resources I have now, it shouldn't be difficult to revive Father. Jiayuzhu nodded and said softly, Then, let's start quickly, Feng. Although her voice was soft, there was a hint of anxiousness in it. Lin Feng looked at his mother. How could he not know the hope in her heart? She had cultivated bitterly for so long and endured for so long. Her mother had done it for her father and for this family. He didn't even hesitate to put himself in danger and even dared to barge into Demon Emperor Island. For her father, her mother could even give up her life. This was love. Lin Feng replied softly. As for himself, he had been looking forward to this day for far too long. Back then, for the sake of his father, for the sake of his promise, he gave up everything in the kingdom of Maru, even forsaking his position as the Holy King, and ventured into the boundless Do Ling world alone. Ziyao had already been found. Only his father had yet to be revived, and Toto had yet to be awakened. The remaining 2 wishes were about to be fulfilled. Phew. After calming down, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. His current state of mind was much more complicated than his mother's. This moment had finally arrived. Netherworld seal! Lin Feng shouted. In an instant, the Netherworld seal lit up. This time, He didn't need the star source energy to activate it. This was because the first time a total of 4.7 billion Wu coins of star source energy had been charged into the Netherworld ship. The energy of the Netherworld ship had reached the dark red line at the bottom. The Netherworld ship had been activated and could sense smoothly. It had an emergency energy source. Whoosh! Lin Feng's figure instantly disappeared and entered the Netherworld ship. Everything was as usual. It was as if the Netherworld ship wouldn't change even after millions of years. This symbolized the existence of the energy technology of the Starry Sky world, which was far beyond the scope of the Do Ling world's energy. The Tianya crystal wall at the entrance was still flashing with a dazzling light. The 7 star crystals of the highest grade in the Do Ling world were merely ordinary decorations here. Passing through the passageway, Lin Feng looked at the Starry Sky experts who were dead but had an eternal physical body. His eyes flashed with light and his breathing became heavy. Once he was deeply shocked when he looked at these experts. Even in front of their corpses, he was like an ant. Now, although his strength had improved tremendously and he had even reached the highest level of the Do Ling world, he was still frightened and terrified when he looked at these super experts. Green skin, huge pores, strange face filled with sadness. The corpses were wearing a thick layer of armor. There were many complicated patterns on the armor. Their blood-red eyes were still wide open. He couldn't even look at them directly. Even the Pengu eyes seemed to be sucked in by those blood-red eyes. The stronger he was, the more he could feel the power of the Starry Sky experts. A weirdo with a curved horn on his head pierced the chest of another dirt-yellow-skinned, fanged weirdo with a long hair. Looking at these two weirdos, he felt as if he could see the scene of the battle at the Starry Sky level. Being trapped in it, in front of them, he felt so small and insignificant. The Starry Sky world. Lin Feng murmured, his eyes blurred. There was no fear, no fear. Inexplicably, he had a desire to leave the Do Ling world and enter the mysterious Starry Sky world to explore. Even if he died in the end, he would have no regret. This was the most direct thought in his heart, the truest thought. Lin Feng smiled faintly and shook his head. It seems like there has always been crazy blood hidden in my body. It's just that I've been suppressed for a long time, replaced by a heavy burden and a sense of responsibility. That's why I've forgotten the foundation of being a martial artist. This is the true essence of cultivation. This is a true martial artist. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. His heart was moved. All this time, he had been carrying far too many burdens. It was only now that the 3 wishes he had made when he left the hunting nation were about to be fulfilled, that his closed heart was truly opened. He had found his true self, or perhaps, I've been influenced by the great sage's martial artist heart. Lin Feng smiled and sighed. To be honest, he admired the great sage a lot. Even if they were on opposite sides, his persistence and pursuit of martial arts had always influenced him deeply. Until now, he still couldn't forget the shocking battle between the great sage and the witch Emperor Jiang. Although he lost, it was glorious. It was a pity that such an expert died in such a cowardly way. It was too unjust. Even in death, he couldn't rest in peace. He was controlled by the energy of death and couldn't be himself. More or less, he had to bear some responsibility for this. If it wasn't for him, he wouldn't have been devoured by the earth pillar. If it wasn't for him, he wouldn't have died. However, many things were destined. When I'm strong enough, I'll let you die in peace. Lin Feng said softly. This was the only thing he could do for the great sage. Along the way, he had a lot of thoughts. It was as if he had returned to the past, to the past. Everything had returned to the beginning. Lin Feng didn't stop. He slowly entered the top cabin where the energy tank was. There was no need to make any preparations. The front of the triangular, glass-like metal tank was wrapped in a layer of soft leather. It was sparkling and translucent. It could be seen clearly. The flow of astral origin energy just reached the deep red line at the bottom. Above the energy tank there were many hubs and tubes that breathed like a heart. Now, if he wanted to supply astral origin energy, he didn't need to use himself as a carrier. He just needed to put the astral origin stone in. It was much more convenient. It was very calm. Now Lin Feng was strangely quiet. His expression was calm. The astral origin stone slowly appeared in his hand. He directly put it into the hub. In an instant, the astral origin stone was sucked in. The energy tank was instantly activated. Like a huge mechanical gear, the astral origin stone was crushed and turned into pure astral origin energy. One piece followed by another. Lin Feng moved skillfully. His eyes sparkled as he stared at the energy tank. The absorption speed was very fast. It was much faster than when he absorbed the shaman coins for the first time. The astral origin energy in the energy tank kept rising. It was like the water level was rising. Bit by bit, the astral origin energy moved from the deep red line to the light red line. The light red line was a mark. It represented the backup energy. Once the astral origin energy reached the light red line, it meant that the netherworld ship could be truly revived. And Duo would definitely wake up. Soon. Lin Feng thought to himself. With more than 70 billion shaman coins worth of astral origin stones, it was no problem to meet the 47 billion shaman coins of the netherworld ship. He might even have a lot left. Time passed quickly. As the astral origin energy gradually reached the light red line, Lin Feng's eyes lit up bit by bit. He was waiting for the miracle to happen. He had been waiting for this moment for 10 years. Is it here? Finally, is it here? Hua! The lamp above the energy tank suddenly lit up and made a soft sound. Although the sound was soft, it was as pleasant as the sound of nature. Lin Feng's calm face instantly revealed a smile. He looked at the mark on the energy tank. The light red line was shining faintly. It was so beautiful. The netherworld ship was finally filled with backup energy. It was too difficult. Phew! Lin Feng let out a long breath as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. At this moment, he felt that the burden on his shoulders had been lifted. All his efforts had finally paid off. It was worth it. Lin Feng's eyes flickered as he looked around. He was confused. Where is Duo? Logically speaking, since the netherworld ship had been reactivated, Duo should have woken up by now. But where is he? Why is he still nowhere to be seen after so long? Lin Feng's heart was filled with doubts. He couldn't help but frown. He looked at the energy tank. Everything was normal. Is something wrong? Lin Feng's mind was filled with questions. He looked around and called out softly, Duo? Duo? I'm here. I'm here. Stop shouting. Suddenly, a familiar yet strange voice rang out. Lin Feng was slightly surprised. His eyes instantly lit up as he revealed a surprised smile. He hadn't heard this voice for a long time. However, he was sure that it was Duo. 6,000. With this 6,000, I have already updated 16,000 today. Oh, I'm going to sleep. I'll continue tomorrow. I won't cheat you. Even if I don't exceed today's update volume, I will at least fulfill my promise to reach 20,000. Chapter 1567. Schwa. Schwa. A strange light gathered from all directions and formed the figure of a nearly 1 meter tall boy, who was currently stretching lazily with sleepy eyes. It was Duo. Making such a big fuss and disturbing my sleep, what are you doing? Duo Hao pretended to be angry, his furrowed brow looking quite comical. Looking at the figure in front of him, Duo Hao felt as if he had been separated from him for a lifetime. Lin Feng pursed his lips lightly as the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. He didn't even notice. There were thousands of words in his heart, but he couldn't say them out loud. He had been waiting for this moment for far too long. Seeing Duo Hao again, he had thought he would have to wait until he reached the starry sky world, but now he had completed this impossible task. The world was truly unpredictable. Hey, are you alright, Lin Feng? Duo Hao asked curiously as he looked Lin Feng up and down. Long time no see, Duo Hao. Thousands of words were condensed into a single sentence. Lin Feng smiled lightly, feeling like he had just reunited with an old friend. To him, Duo Hao was both a teacher and a friend, the first true teacher who had enlightened him on the path of martial arts, but his identity was so special that Lin Feng had always regarded him as a friend. There were no secrets between the two of them. Please, how long can it be? Duo Hao rolled his eyes, shook his head and stretched his body. It's just a nap, eh? Duo's eyes widened as he looked at Lin Feng. He rubbed his eyes with his chubby little hands and shook his head. Am I dreaming? Or am I still asleep? He muttered. Am I dreaming? Or am I still asleep? Lin Feng, when did you cultivate to the Saint King Realm High Order? Duo was dumbfounded. Lin Feng also burst into laughter. Indeed, this period of time had been very long for him, the longest and most rugged journey of his life so far, but to Duo Hao, it had only been the blink of an eye. Nap for 10 years, that was all. One had to know that Duo Hao had been waiting for him for a full 330,000 years. 10 years? In the blink of an eye. This artifact spirit in front of him was an artifact spirit with extraordinary wisdom, a multi-billion-year-old monster. F***CK. Duo quickly reacted and gave him a thumbs up before exclaiming in surprise, Lin Feng, you're really good. I just took a nap and you're already on the verge of becoming a starry sky master. Your cultivation speed, isn't it a little too terrifying? 10 years. In 10 years, he had gone from a lowly human warrior in the kingdom of Maru to the all-powerful human emperor who stood at the peak of the Douling world. Indeed, Lin Feng's cultivation speed was more than just terrifying. It was simply heaven-defying. His cultivation speed was like that of a reincarnated monster. It's a long story. Lin Feng smiled and looked at Plenty. They had not seen each other for 10 years, but there was still no estrangement between them. The friendship between them was quite deep. After a brief exchange of greetings, Lin Feng quickly told him about what had happened in the past few days. Oh, as if listening to a story, Duo nodded his head repeatedly, his eyes shining brightly. That's about it. Lin Feng breathed a sigh of relief, and roughly described what had happened to Duo. If he really wanted to tell them everything one by one, 3 days and 3 nights might not be enough. These 10 years were as long as a reincarnation cycle to him. What he experienced, what he gained, what he lost, what he gained, it was too much. This was life. The indescribable joys and sorrows were all in one's heart. Not bad at all. Duo nodded his head in admiration. He did not know how many times he had said this in a short period of time, but his admiration came from the bottom of his heart. Lin Feng's good fortune, his ability to grasp opportunities, and his outstanding adaptability far exceeded Duo's expectations in all aspects. Originally, in his opinion, with Lin Feng's lousy aptitude, it was already good enough for him to become a saint stage expert. Moreover, it would take a lot of time and effort to cultivate him. But now, not only had Lin Feng become a high-level Saint King, but he was also not far from becoming a starry sky master. I really didn't misjudge you. Duo showed a big smile and patted Lin Feng's shoulder with his chubby little hand to show his encouragement. Your performance did not disgrace your master's face. When you enter the starry sky world in the future, you will definitely become famous and invincible. It's still early, Lin Feng smiled. Before entering the starry sky world, he still had many things to do. The greater the power, the greater the responsibility. This was the best description for the current him. Just the southern region alone, he could not ignore the heavenly secret Saint Lord's request. Not to mention the fact that the blood of humans flowed in his body. How could he watch as his fellow humans were killed and die in a war? The answer was obviously no. Heh, do you want me to help you become a starry sky master directly? Duo raised his eyebrows and grinned. No need. Lin Feng shook his head and refused without even thinking about it, saying, if you blindly rely on others and take shortcuts, sooner or later you will fall back to square one. Only by moving forward step by step and cultivating diligently can one's strength truly belong to oneself. This is the path of a cultivator. Indeed, he didn't need it. Even without Duo's help, hadn't he reached this point step by step? Relying on others to take shortcuts would only lead to dependence and cowardice. Only by relying on oneself would one become a true powerhouse, a true cultivator. Just like the Tao of the spear, every cultivator who truly used the spear had their own unique Tao of the spear. Moreover, the present was different from the past. Now, he had no doubt that he could become a starry sky master in the future. It was just a matter of time. The path to the starry sky was not far away. Tisk, you've matured a lot. Duo smiled and narrowed his eyes. It seems that you haven't wasted the past 10 years, Lin Feng. Your strength has not only grown, but your temperament has also matured a lot. After a pause, Duo shrugged. Actually, I was just joking with you. Even if I wanted to promote you, the nether ship's energy is not enough. Lin Feng was speechless and smiled bitterly. After 10 years, Duo was still the same. He hadn't changed at all. Indeed, the netherworld ship had only replenished its reserve energy, and it was still far from being fully charged. The astral origin stone was relatively precious. There weren't many astral origin stones on ordinary planet. It was already very rare for the Doling world to have such a large batch of astral origin stones. If they were to waste it again, they might not be so lucky to find it again in the future. Save as much as possible. However, it really makes one click his tongue in wonder. A small Doling world actually has so many star origin stones? Duo muttered thoughtfully. I dare not believe it. I think it has something to do with Pangu and the 3,000 fiend gods. Lin Feng's eyes twinkled. Pangu and the 3,000 demon gods were all masters of the universe, so it was not surprising that they had star origin stones. Star origin stones were rare on ordinary planets, but on the planets where the masters of the universe were born, star origin stones were nothing to them. Different levels of power had different horizons and different resources. Just like himself now, Doling coins were nothing to him. What was a star crystal? However, in the Lin family village back then, a little Doling coin was already priceless. In the Yanling prefecture, a little star crystal was enough to make people go crazy. This was the difference in levels. Smart. Duo nodded, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Other than the star origin stones, there might be other treasures. Other treasures? Lin Feng was slightly stunned. He smiled faintly and said, even if there are other treasures, I can't use them. That's true. Duo shrugged. They looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. The atmosphere was harmonious. After a long separation, there were too many things to talk about. However, to Lin Feng, there was still one more important thing to do. Revive his father. This was his biggest wish, and it was also his mother's biggest wish. That day, his father was injured and almost died because of him. His meridians were all broken, and he was seriously injured like a cripple. His life spirit and heart were shattered. According to Duo, his father had always been at death's door. He relied on his strong will and willpower to hold on. In the end, in order to replace Duo's eyes, he completely exhausted his body and sacrificed the only strength he had left. The greatest thing in the world was his parent. Filial piety was the most important thing. As his son, no matter the price, he had to save his father. Soon, under Duo's guidance, he passed through the light door and came to a quiet small room. Although the room was small, there was a familiar smell to it. Lin Feng stepped in slowly and walked towards the only cold crystal coffin in the room. Cold light shone through the crystal coffin, and there were spiraling ice cubes on it, giving it a cold luster. Inside the coffin, a man's body was sealed in ice. His body was covered in a layer of frost, and he was completely isolated from the outside world. "Father," Lin Xiaotian. "Father!" Lin Feng murmured softly, looking at his father with mixed feelings. It was as if he had returned to the past, Memories appeared like fragments, piecing together piece by piece. A father's love was like the sky. His father was not a person who was good with words, but everything he did was for his own good from the bottom of his heart. He guided and helped him time and time again. That day, in order to save him and his brother, his father was seriously injured and fled to the Lin family village. There were many things that his father would never tell him. This was what it meant to be a man, a true man of indomitable spirit. He silently contributed without asking for anything in return. He used his body to support the family. Even if the family was in tatters, he had no regrets. At that time, he could only watch as his father almost died, but there was nothing he could do. Today it was different. Duo. Lin Feng looked at the ice coffin, his eyes shining brightly. Duo responded. "Tell me, how can I save my father?" Lin Feng turned his head and looked at Duo with a serious expression. No matter the price, no matter how difficult it was, he would do his best to do it. Just like his mother, she would not hesitate to sacrifice her life to save his father. It was the same for him. "Are you sure?" Duo narrowed his eyes and asked. "Yes," Lin Feng said without hesitation. "As long as I can save my father." "Okay." Duo's eyes flashed brightly. 9,000. Continue next chapter. Break through the minimum 10,000. Chapter 1568. 3 Steps. Duo said seriously. Lin Feng listened attentively. "Actually, it shouldn't be too difficult for the current you." Duo shrugged and chuckled. Lin Feng was speechless. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Duo was still as childish as before. However, this was at least good news. Even so, you must remember not to be careless. The first step is to reconstruct the meridians and connect the broken meridians. Then, nourish your soul and recover its power. Finally, Duo dragged out his words and looked at Lin Feng. "Wash your body and return it to its original state." "Okay, what should I do?" Lin Feng had no objections. Although he didn't know how to treat it, he trusted Duo. "One step at a time," Duo said. "First, we'll start with the first step. Reconstruct the meridians. Listen to my instructions and open the ice coffin. Don't rush. Adjust your state of mind. All 3 steps require you to personally perform. You must not fail." "Don't worry, I definitely won't fail." Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. His voice was filled with absolute confidence. Not to mention that he was saving his father, he would definitely do it wholeheartedly and carefully. After all, he was a refiner. How could reconstructing the meridians be more difficult than refining a heaven-rank treasure? The refinement of an astral treasure truly didn't allow for the slightest mistake or flaw. "Okay, then let's begin." Duo nodded. Reconstruct the meridians. This was a very complicated process. For Lin Feng, it was also a great test. The star source energy entered his father's body. It was like a pair of hands, connecting his father's broken meridians one by one. Nourished by the star source energy and infused with life energy, the meridians slowly reconnected like withered trees in spring. How many meridians were there in the human body? The large meridians and the small meridians were like tiny rivers. The large meridians consumed a lot of energy, but reconnecting them was actually easy. The troublesome part was the small meridians. They were so thin that they couldn't be seen. Only the star source energy could sense them. Lin Feng placed his hands flat on his father's back and closed his eyes. His mind was as meticulous as dust. He was very clear that he couldn't make the slightest mistake. How could he randomly connect the meridians in his body? If he made a mistake, his entire body would be in a mess. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. Even if he had refined countless astral treasures, at this moment, Lin Feng could not help but feel somewhat nervous. After all, it was his first time, and his target was his father. There must be no mistakes. Plenty floated in the air, rubbing his chin and nodding his head, his eyes glittering. Not bad at all. His control is fine and perfect. This kid. Plenty praised and clicked his tongue. He has improved a lot in the past 10 years. This level of control is impossible without the strength of an artificer. Master has picked up a treasure this time. Good seedling, really good seedling. Not only is his aptitude excellent, his character is also rare and commendable. Even his attainments as an artifact refiner are so outstanding. Duo narrowed his eyes as he looked at Lin Feng. The more he looked at it, the more he liked it. Previously, he actually did not expect too much from Lin Feng. He had only waited for 330,000 years and did not want to waste any more time. Even if Lin Feng's aptitude was barely qualified, he could only make do with it. How could he have imagined that after 3 days, he would have a whole new level of respect? The current Lin Feng was outstanding in every aspect, considerably perfect. Duo was like a mother-in-law looking at her son-in-law. The more he looked, the more he liked him. Lin Feng did not know how to think. In fact, he could not think at this moment. All of his thoughts were focused on his father, incomparably focused. He did not have the slightest bit of distraction. Reconstructing meridians was a considerably delicate job. Even if Lin Feng's attainments as an artificer were profound, he still spent no less than 6 hours to completely connect all of his father's meridians. He even carefully checked them 3 times, just in case. He absolutely could not make any mistakes. Phew! Letting out a long breath, Lin Feng opened his eyes and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He was considerably exhausted, but it was worth it. He stood up and looked at his father. At this moment, he felt completely different. Originally, his father was like a broken porcelain vase, but now, at least, he looked like a whole body. Even if he was still in a deep sleep, the feeling was completely different. He was just sleeping, without any visible pain, just like a normal person. It's quite perfect. Duo gave him 2 thumbs up and raised his eyebrows with a smile. Lin Feng smiled tiredly. A huge weight had been lifted from his heart. Even Duo had said so. Proved that his first step was very successful. This was enough. 1 step at a time. By the way, Duo. Lin Feng looked at Duo. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he asked curiously, why must the first step be to personally reconstruct the meridians? What will happen if I use the star fruit Qi Yuan fruit, or 1,000 meridians convergence? Not only can they reconstruct the meridians, but they can also regrow broken limbs. Duo blinked his big eyes and said curiously, of course they can be used. Lin Feng was stunned. Isn't the first step to personally connect the meridians? Duo blinked and asked in return, who said so? Lin Feng was stunned. He shook his head speechlessly. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It turned out that using the star fruit could connect the meridians, but he had spent a lot of effort. He was also afraid that something would go wrong, so he wasted a lot of time and energy. In the end, it was useless. You defeated me, Lin Feng said helplessly. Fortunately, at least he had successfully reconstructed his father's meridians. He had only wasted a little time. I didn't know. Duo pretended to be innocent and blinked his big eyes. Then do you have any star fruits similar to the soul-returning fruit? Of course. Lin Feng sighed. He looked at Duo and said helplessly, if I didn't mention it, You wouldn't have asked me to personally nourish the Fate Soul and recover its strength, right? Clearly, the star fruits were enough to complete the task. They could even do it better than him. It's your fault for not mentioning it before, Duo said with his arms crossed. All right. Lin Feng sighed helplessly. However, he didn't want to be entangled in this matter. Anyway, he had already done it. At least everything was in order and nothing went wrong. A light flashed in his hand and the soul-returning fruit appeared. Although there were very few soul-returning fruits, and he and his mother had used a lot of them, Wing had helped him earn a lot on Demon Emperor Island. It was too much. It was just a soul-returning fruit. Not to mention one, even 10 of them were just a small number. Come, let's continue with the second step. Nourish the Fate Soul and recover its strength. Duo said and regained his serious expression. With your father's endurance, the entire soul-returning fruit is too nourishing. Lin Feng, you have to do it personally. Be careful. The Fate Soul is very weak. You can't make any mistakes. I understand. Lin Feng's eyes flickered as he nodded. Where the soul was, it was the foundation of a martial artist and a person. Duo nodded and said seriously, all right? Listen to my instructions carefully. Time passed by second. Just as Duo said, the second step was rather complicated. After all, his father had lost all his strength and had to rely on himself to help him slowly absorb it bit by bit. Even with a top-grade star fruit like the soul-returning fruit, it still took a lot of effort. It wasn't any easier than the first step, especially the weakness of the Fate Soul. His father's Fate Soul had been injured before. It was like a broken porcelain that would shatter with a touch. He had to be very gentle and careful. Nurturing was a rather tedious process. Fortunately, Lin Feng was quite patient. His face was slightly red. Lin Feng pursed his lips and channeled his strength again and again. He slowly melted the soul-returning fruit and released his soul-returning fruit to help his father recover the strength of his Fate Soul. That tiny life spirit was like a small blade of grass, slowly growing and growing again, a full 10 hours. When the Fate Soul regained its strength and radiated with vigor, Lin Feng was almost exhausted. It was too tiring. Even an Iron Man wouldn't be able to withstand the continuous exhaustion of energy, let alone his own injuries. He had been severely injured in the battle with the Great Sage. His soul power hadn't even reached 30% yet. However, he didn't want to wait any longer. He didn't want to see his mother's anxious and hopeful expression. Also, he wanted to revive his father as soon as possible and see him. This was his greatest wish. Ha! Lin Feng clenched his fist. His tired eyes flashed as he gritted his teeth. His will was still as firm as ever. Although he was mentally exhausted, he had a goal and motivation. He could persevere. Duo carefully inspected his father's body. After a long time, he nodded and said, "Perfect. You did well. Next is the third step. Cleansing the body and returning it to its original state." Looking at Lin Feng, Duo asked, "How is it? Do you want to rest for a while?" "No need." Lin Feng's eyes burned. He could definitely overcome this challenge. After all, his soul was injured. Even if he rested for a while, it wouldn't be much better. There was no need to waste time. It was better to use his strong will to complete the third step in one go so that his mother wouldn't have to wait outside for too long. Okay. Duo looked at Lin Feng and said, "The third step doesn't require anything. You just need to have perfect control over your strength. Although your father's body looks good on the outside, it's already riddled with injuries on the inside. It's fine if he doesn't take the third step, but his future achievements will be limited. Reaching the Saint Realm is probably his limit. If you want him to recover his true strength, there's only one path to take: destruction and reconstruction. Destroy everything, cleanse the body, and return it to its original state." Duo's eyes lit up as he looked at Lin Feng. Lin Feng nodded thoughtfully. He understood what duo meant. His father's injuries had dragged on for far too long. It was to the point where it was beyond cure. It was like a broken porcelain that couldn't be broken any more. Even if it was forcefully repaired, there would still be traces of it. Only by shattering it and resetting it could those traces be completely erased. Perhaps his father would have to start all over again after cleansing the body, but what did that count for? The current him had enough resources to help his father cultivate quickly. Without destruction, there would be no construction. 12,000, breaking through the minimum of 1,000, charging towards 20,000. Chapter 1569. Grand Lotus Garden. Jia Yizhu pursed her lips and waited patiently. Only the sound of her breathing could be heard in the empty room. She was anxious with every passing second. At this time, Lin Feng had disappeared into the netherworld ship for a day and a night. It was hard to endure. For Jia Yizhu, this day and night could be said to be the longest time she had waited. Every second felt so unbearable. That day they separated because she was not strong enough. Today she had tried her best. If she could not revive Xiao Tian this time, it would be a heavy blow to her. After waiting for so many years, Jia Yizhu's heart was in turmoil. She could not describe the joys and sorrows in her heart. She knew that if she could not revive Xiao Tian this time, the hope would be even slimmer in the future. Could he be revived? There must be no problem. Jia Yizhu clenched her fists. Her body was trembling. She could not calm down. Such a long period of time could actually be spent cultivating, but no matter what, she could not calm her heart down, because at this moment, all her thoughts were occupied. Revive. She must revive. No one knew how much she had sacrificed. Since they were forced to separate, she had worked hard to cultivate. The hardships she had endured were not known to outsiders. It was imaginable that she could cultivate from an ordinary warrior to an ancient god in such a short time. She had sacrificed so much and gained so much. After that, she had traveled all over the wasteland world to search for the Star Source Stone. Until she found out that the Star Source Stone might exist. For her lover, she did not hesitate to enter the legendary forbidden area of the monster clan. For what? For whom? Lin Xiaotian. Love was always blind and deep. For the one you loved, you were willing to pay any price. And would the heavens let the lovers get married in the end? In an instant, a bright light flashed and Lin Feng's figure suddenly appeared. His face was filled with deep fatigue, and he looked as if he had exhausted all his strength. However, his eyes were shining and he was full of spirit. There was an indescribable excitement and agitation in his eyes. Feng. Seeing Lin Feng appear, Jia Yizhu's beautiful eyes instantly lit up. However, she did not see the figure that she had been yearning for day and night. Jia Yizhu's heart was hanging in the air, but it fell back down in an instant. Her face turned pale. Just as she was about to ask, another light flashed. This time, it was another man's figure that was different from the others. His figure was well-proportioned and he wasn't particularly tall, but he had a kind of maturity and experience. His eyes were calm and natural, as if he had seen through everything in the world. His appearance instantly caused Jia Yizhu's pale face to redden. Her beautiful eyes widened as her body trembled uncontrollably. Xiao Tian, it really is you. It really is you, she muttered to herself. Her voice was like a thread going up and down. She was quite emotional. Thank you for your hard work, Yizhu. Lin Xiaotian opened his mouth and showed a rare smile. The pair of eyes that had seen through the mundane world had a gentleness that only belonged to lovers. Four eyes looked at each other. At this moment, there was no room for anything else in their eyes. Jia Yizhu burst into tears. No matter how strong she was, she was always a woman. A woman who longed to be loved and a woman who longed for a family. Lin Xiaotian opened his arms and gently hugged Jia Yizhu into his arms. His eyes were moist as he stroked Jia Yizhu's hair. At this moment, he had been waiting for a long time. The scene was warm and touching. Lin Feng stood aside and gently wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. A happy smile appeared on his face. Seeing that his father and mother were finally reunited, he felt as if his heart was about to jump out of his chest. He couldn't say anything. There was only a rush of excitement and satisfaction. As a son, wasn't this what he wanted? The power and benefits of the mundane world were far from being comparable to this ordinary and warm feeling. Reuniting after a long separation and coming back to life after death, he believed that his father and mother had too much to say and too much to say. There was no need for him to stand here and be a third wheel. Lin Feng smiled and glanced at his parents again. His figure flashed gently and left in an instant. There were many things to do. Many things to do. For Lin Feng, there was no possibility of stopping. He couldn't neglect his own cultivation, and he couldn't ignore the affairs of the southern region. The god-making plan was carried out one batch after another. He was quite busy and wished he could have a few more clones. Now that his main body had completed the last task, he returned to the star-stepping mansion to recuperate and recover the power of his soul. Only his clone was left to deal with all the matters, but it was a mess. However, the feeling was completely different. He had restarted the Netherworld ship, awakened Toto, and even resurrected his father. Now, he felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. There was only one task left, or rather, it was his responsibility. The safety of the entire human race. Phew! Exhaling softly, Lin Feng closed all the various proposals on the table. He had finished dealing with everything that needed to be dealt with. The southern region was so big, and there were many trivial matters. Originally, Shun was handling these matters, but Shun had something to deal with and left for a while. Thus, he left all of them to him. King Yen was in charge of the saint-level experts of the god-making plan, while King Lu was in charge of those below the saint level. They were all very busy. Originally, he had Empress Qianlian to help him solve his problems, but recently, Empress Qianlian had gone into seclusion to cultivate again. As for Wan Macho, that guy loved martial arts as much as his life. He was a cultivation madman. Of course, it was impossible for there to be no talents in the southern region. It was just that there were too few people who could be trusted. Ugh, this can't go on. Lin Feng shook his head, feeling a little troubled. It was fine to let him handle some affairs occasionally, but if this continued, it wouldn't be right for him or the southern region. It was just like when he was in the kingdom of Maru. Although he was the commander of the human race, his mission was to cultivate and increase his strength, because this was his strength. Management, politics, and so on were all not his strength. Is there anyone else who can help? Lin Feng rested his chin on his hand and frowned slightly. He wanted to find a scapegoat to quickly throw away the mission. Clan leader Lin Zhen? No, managing a clan is already his limit. Grandfather? No, grandfather is an ancient after all. I can trust him, but it's hard for me to trust others. Should I look for my younger brother? Ugh. My younger brother is quite capable, and his strength is good in all aspects. However, he is not famous enough, and it's hard for others to trust him to manage the kingdom of Maru. Moreover, the power level of the kingdom of Maru and the southern region is too far apart. Lin Feng felt a headache coming on. He couldn't do this and he couldn't do that. It was hard to have the best of both worlds. He had to think hard. 14,000 continue. Chapter 1570. It was really difficult. It seemed simple, but it was not. He had to be capable, convincing, and trustworthy. Moreover, he had to be a human being. This requirement was really too high. After thinking about it for a long time, he still couldn't find a suitable candidate. Lin Feng let out a long sigh and felt a little helpless. Let's wait for Shun to return first. I don't feel at ease entrusting such a big southern region to someone I don't trust. After all, this was his responsibility. He couldn't shirk responsibility and wouldn't do irresponsible behavior. As he was thinking in his heart, suddenly, Lin Feng's eyes lit up slightly. He looked into the distance and couldn't help but walk out with a smile. The man's breath was very weak. He seemed to be an ordinary person, but his identity was quite extraordinary. His father, Lin Xiaotian. Are you better, father? Lin Feng asked with a smile. Walking in the garden, looking at his father's face, he could roughly guess his father's physical condition. After a few days of rest, I'm almost recovered. Lin Xiaotian nodded slightly, without much expression on his face. Although he was now weak, he didn't look sad at all. I'm sorry, father, Lin Feng said softly. You can't keep your cultivation. Lin Xiaotian said indifferently. I'm very satisfied to be able to stay alive and reunite with you and mother. Strength doesn't matter. What I lose will come back sooner or later. Lin Xiaotian's eyes flashed and he said slowly, but there are some things that can never come back once lost. Lin Feng nodded. He knew what his father meant. He should do what he should do. Don't think so much. The opportunity was fleeting. I'm sorry, father. I haven't had time to accompany you and mother recently. When I have time, I'll take you back to the Lin family village to see my brother, Lin Feng said. It doesn't matter. Business is more important. Lin Xiaotian's eyes flashed with a soft light and he said softly, I can also take this opportunity to accompany your mother and make up for the regret of the past 30 years. Looking at Lin Feng, Lin Xiaotian's eyes flashed with a strange brilliance. I was disheartened after the battle and lived in seclusion in the Lin family village. I only hoped that you and your brother could live a peaceful life, but I didn't expect. Today, Feng you have actually become a top-notch expert who commands the entire Douling world. It's all thanks to you that your mother and I were able to reunite again. Lin Xiaotian smiled and sighed softly. The world is really unpredictable. Indeed. Lin Feng also smiled. Back then, his father had said that in terms of aptitude, he was not even as good as his younger brother. However, aptitude and talent were not everything. Personality, opportunity, perseverance, there were too many. The path of a martial artist was only known to oneself. Actually, I didn't expect it either. Lin Feng shrugged and smiled. Ever since he was young, he had never been an ambitious person with great goals. It was only for the sake of his family and loved ones that he walked the path of a martial artist step by step. Even after repelling the beast tide and saving the Tianwu continent, it was the same. When he came to the Douling world, he only wanted to find Zi Yao and save his father. He had never thought of sitting on the throne of the human emperor one day. However, step by step, he had slowly walked to where he was now. It had to be said that there was heaven's will in the underworld. Lin Xiaotian nodded and looked at Lin Feng with a solemn expression. He said earnestly, the more power you have, the more responsibility you have to bear. As a father, I only hope that you will be safe and sound. However, at the same time, I also hope that you will not forget your original intention. Don't forget your responsibility. Only then can you be a real man. I will, father. Lin Feng looked at his father, his eyes flashing. Lin Xiaotian replied. The solemn expression on his face slowly disappeared. He said softly, when things calm down, I will return to the kingdom of Meru with your mother to live in seclusion and live a simple life. There was a gentle light in his eyes. He unconsciously revealed a smile. It was a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. Lin Feng knew that his father had thought it through. In fact, he had always known that his father was not a person who was attached to power. He might not be smart, but he had great wisdom and great ability. He would be firm and persistent in the goal in his heart, even if he had to sacrifice his life. And his character, in a certain aspect, was completely inherited from his father. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. Looking at his father, a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Why didn't he think of it? After searching for so long, he had forgotten about the person in front of him. His father. Patriarch Lin Jun had once mentioned that his father's ability was 100 times stronger than his. However, his father had never liked to fight for power, so he did not take over as the patriarch. However, this did not mean that he was not capable. It should be known that at that time, his father's ability was stronger than his second uncle, Lam Tok Ti. Just this alone was enough to show that. Not only did his father have the blood of the human race flowing in his body, but he also had a strong sense of responsibility like himself. Most importantly, he was his father, a person who could be 100% trusted. Wouldn't it be wonderful if his father could take over the political affairs and control the rear of the southern region? The only problem was, could his father convince the public? The answer was obviously no. Firstly, his father was not famous. Secondly, his father's strength was now 0. He was not even a martial artist. It was too difficult for him to convince the public. Lin Feng pursed his lips and frowned slightly. In an instant, he laughed self-deprecatingly. So what? What did it matter if the public was convinced or not? He was his father. Who would dare to say no if he was pushed to the top? Using people for his own sake? He used people for his own sake. It had always been like this. Wasn't it the same when he pushed his younger brother onto the political platform in the Kingdom of Meru? What happened later? His younger brother had real ability. As he slowly made achievements, he was now sitting firmly on the throne and was famous for his prestige. Could it be that his father didn't have real ability? Lin Feng smiled faintly. When he thought of this, the only scruple in his heart disappeared. It was decided then. The only question now was whether his father was willing to do it or not. If his father really didn't care about politics and wanted to live a carefree life with his mother, then as his son, he naturally wouldn't force him to do so. What do you want to say? Lin Xiaotian looked at Lin Feng's hesitant expression and said indifferently. Father, I have an idea, but I don't know if you are willing to do it? Lin Feng looked at his father and smiled. His father was indeed shrewd. He only showed a slight expression and his father had seen through him. In this case, there was no need to hide. There was nothing that could not be said between father and son. Soon, Lin Feng briefly explained his thoughts to Lin Feng. Lin Xiaotian's eyes lit up and he fell silent. The atmosphere was quiet. In the garden, Lin Feng walked side by side with his father. He did not want to disturb him. He did not want to interfere with his father's decision. It would be good if his father was willing to help him. If his father was not willing, he would just let it go. Although he knew his father would definitely agree if he insisted, it was not his intention. After a long time, I promise you. Lin Xiaotian slowly uttered 4 words, landing on the ground with a sound. Looking at his father, he could see from his eyes that his father was not doing it for power or responsibility. Instead, it was for the love between father and son. Deputy Region Master. As the Lord of the Southern Region, Lin Feng officially gave the order. He appointed 2 Deputy Region Masters, namely Shun and Lin Xiaotian. This order caused an uproar in the Southern Region. There was an uproar in the 9 continents. They could not believe it. Shun's appointment could be said to be supported by the people, but Lin Xiaotian, who was Lin Xiaotian? This question puzzled the people of the Southern Region. Let me tell you a secret. Lin Xiaotian's true identity. He is Lin Feng's biological father. What? Is this for real? He appointed a person who can't even be the clan leader as the Deputy Region Master. He has no experience at all. How can he manage the entire Southern Region? This is too much of a joke, right? That's right. I heard that Lin Xiaotian has just recovered from his serious injuries. He's so weak that he can't even truss a chicken. If it's a one-on-one battle, I can defeat him." All kinds of rumors were spreading in all the continents and counties. With the instigation of some people, the rumors became more and more outrageous. There were even signs of resentment among the people. However, the people were not convinced. Humans were like this. They would forget the pain once the scars had healed. Not long ago, they had received Lin Feng's favor and praised him countless times for his ability to protect the southern region. But now, they had just turned around and Lin Feng's contributions had already been thrown out of the window. They thought the power of the people was the most powerful and the power of public opinion was quite strong. They only remembered Lin Feng's kindness but forgot about the past. Lin Feng was the existence they called a tyrant. Those who are not convinced get lost. Leave the southern region and go wherever you want. From now on, those who talk about this in private will be arrested. Those who spread rumors and create trouble will be locked up. Those who try to sow discord will be locked up. Those who insult will be killed. I don't want to hear any more gossip about my father. Those who violate the rules will have to bear the consequences. In the sky of all the continents, Lin Feng held the doomsday spear in his hand and his eyes were cold. A strong killing intent burst out. Even though it was just in the sky, one could still feel the terrifying aura. It was a naked warning and a threat. Lin Feng never cared about how others thought of him. Whether he was wrong or not, history would judge him, not now. Appointing people by favoritism? He had always been like this. A tyrant who acted alone. It was quiet. Since Lin Feng had issued a warning, he would not tolerate it anymore. In an instant, the 9 continents were filled with a reign of terror. After receiving the order, the city lords wantonly arrested people in the tea-houses and restaurants. It was very high-profile. All those who protested were locked up and locked up. A few who openly provoked and insulted him were even beheaded on the street. Their methods were extremely violent. However, it was the most direct and effective way to shut people up. Most humans bullied the weak and feared the strong because they were at the bottom of the social ladder and did not want to see others doing well. In just a few days, the storm quickly subsided. However, this was just the beginning. The real challenge did not come from the ordinary people of the southern region. It was the liches and demons. 17,000 continue. Chapter 1571. Another battle had begun. The shaman and demon race could not stand the loneliness. As long as they could find the slightest weakness of the other party, they would beat them to death. As the rumors spread, the news of the great sage's death spread like a plague. The entire demon race army panicked and fell into chaos. Adding on the fact that the 4 sovereigns were injured, hiding, and scheming, the situation became even more chaotic. Shi Juin led the shaman race army and rushed over in a mighty manner. Take his life while he's weak. The demon race army's morale was low. On the other hand, the shaman race army's morale was high. They were ambitious and wanted to drive the demon race back to the boundless sea and reclaim their lost land. Another great battle broke out. This time, there was no suspense. The demon race army was at a disadvantage almost as soon as the battle started, even if they were in a defensive position. Strength was indeed important, but morale, it was also a factor that could not be ignored in war. An army with high morale was like having absolute confidence. The strength it displayed was incomparably powerful. On the surface, the demon race army's strength was not weaker than the shaman race army, especially when the shaman race army was led by Shi Juin. Shaman Emperor Dijiang was not present, but the result was completely one-sided. Ha ha! Ha 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 ha! In the military camp, Shi Juin laughed wildly without restraint. His gloomy and cold eyes flashed with a confident luster. He was incomparably excited about this carefree victory. Swept away his depression. During the period when he was temporarily the shaman emperor, he had suffered a lot. He was suppressed and beaten by the demon race. The final defeat was engraved in his heart. It directly caused him to lose the hearts of the people. He was deserted by everyone and stepped down from the shaman emperor's position, becoming an abandoned pawn. Who would have thought that things would take a turn for the worse? Shaman Emperor Dejiang, who he had regarded as an enemy, had nurtured him. This victory could be said to have pulled him back from hell. With Dejiang's arrangement, he believed that he would be able to return to the shaman emperor's position in a short 1 year and lead the entire shaman race. This time, it would not be temporary, but permanent. He, Shi Jiuyin, would be the future shaman emperor. Thinking of this, Shi Jiuyin's eyes burned with ambition. He was extremely obsessed with power, even more so than strength. Reporting to the Shaman King, the Earth Shaman King has arrived. The guard reported. Is that so? Let him in. Shi Jiuyin's eyes lit up as he waved his hand. Now, as he turned hostility into friendship with the Witch Emperor Jiang, he and Hutu were no longer enemies. Of course, their friendship was also ordinary. After all, they were once enemies. It was impossible for them to shake hands and make peace in the blink of an eye. They were still very unfamiliar with each other. 9-in. Hutu slowly entered and nodded. Rare guest. Shi Jiuyin's lips curled into a cold sneer as he gestured for Huang Xiaolong to enter. There's no need. I'm just here to pass on a message. Hutu's eyes were burning as she spoke indifferently. Oh! Shi Jiuyin snorted disdainfully and said with a smile that didn't look like a smile, what kind of words could make the Hutu Shaman King come personally? Jiuyin is overwhelmed by the favor. Hutu could hear the sarcasm in Shi Jiuyin's words. Her expression changed slightly, but she didn't take it to heart. She spoke slowly. Pass on the Witch Emperor's message. The Witch Race Army is to stop attacking and wait for further instructions. Shi Jiuyin frowned, looking at Hutu with suspicion. What kind of joke is this? My Witch Race's morale is at its peak. Our warriors are crazed for battle. On top of that, the demonic beast army's morale is low. With such a great advantage, you're telling me to stop the battle? Ridiculous. In Shi Jiuyin's eyes, it was indeed ridiculous. It felt like there was food in front of you, but someone suddenly told you you can't eat it. Wasn't this a joke? A light flickered in Hutu's eyes, but she said indifferently, I'm just here to pass on the Witch Emperor's message. You. Shi Jiuyin was enraged, but he quickly calmed down. He asked solemnly, Where is the Witch Emperor? I want to see him. Hutu shook her head. I don't know, the Witch Emperor seems to have something to do. Is that so? Shi Jiuyin narrowed his eyes. A sharp light glinted in his eyes. Alright, I got it. Watching Shi Jiuyin's expression change, Hutu's eyes narrowed. She said earnestly, Let me give you a piece of advice. The Witch Emperor has his reasons for doing this. Don't play with fire. Without waiting for Shi Jiuyin's reply, Hutu turned and left, leaving Shi Jiuyin alone with a gloomy expression. A long time later, Shi Jiuyin's eyes were filled with disdain. Cowardly as a mouse, the opportunity is fleeting, it'll be gone if you miss it. Who knows if Hutu is telling the truth? Maybe the Witch Emperor didn't say so, or maybe he's just making up a rumor. Shi Jiuyin sneered. Maybe he's resentful, unwilling to accept me as the Witch Emperor, and is thinking of ways to frame me. If I let the demonic beast army leave, my reputation will be ruined. I won't be able to clear my name even if I jump into the Yellow River. The so-called message is unclear. Even if he denies it, I can't do anything to him. There's no need to listen to his nonsense. Even if it's really the Witch Emperor's order, it doesn't matter. When a general is outside, the monarch's orders cannot be obeyed. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I must grab hold of it. Clenching his fists, Shi Jiuyin's eyes shone with determination. Want him to give up the meat at his mouth, give up the best chance to make a name for himself. He wasn't willing. The war between the shamans and demonic beasts was in full swing. On the other side, the southern region was also buzzing with activity. A new broom sweeps clean. Lin Xiaotian was very clear about his identity and status. He also knew that Lin Feng had paved the way for him. Since that was the case, he had to strike while the iron was hot to secure his position. He didn't want to rely on Lin Feng's help every time. It was fine once in a while, but in the long run, it would affect the hearts of the people. First, stabilize the internal situation, then deal with the external situation. The policy of seclusion and locking the domain remained unchanged, but Lin Xiaotian put the selection plan on the table. Different from the God creation plan that Lin Feng had secretly selected, Lin Xiaotian's plan was more similar to Emperor Yao's plan when he was alive. Starting from the foundation, starting from the bloodline, the difference was that with the support of Lin Feng's resources, the level of the plan was different. Covering the entire southern region. It could be said that this was a subversive plan. The entire region would be divided into different levels to select the elites and test their aptitude. As long as the cultivators had the aptitude, they would be carefully nurtured, and there would be no mistakes. Various levels of martial dojos would be established, a perfect system would be set up, and the citizens would be divided into different levels. Poor cultivators would be given relief, and the peace of the entire region would be maintained. Buying the hearts of the people from top to bottom, and establishing a perfect legal system. For a time, the entire southern region was shaken. Of course, there were more people who applauded. After all, the majority of the people were at the bottom of society. The series of measures could be said to be spending money like flowing water. In an instant, the state treasury's wealth poured out like a flood, but Lin Xiaotian was not reluctant at all. In fact, Lin Feng was even more indifferent. He had long regarded money as dirt. Money? Lin Feng had too much. In Lin Xiaotian's opinion, this was just establishing a cycle. If it was used for the people, it would definitely be taken from the people in the future. The more willing he was, the brighter the future of the southern region. Lin Feng naturally allowed his father to implement the new policies. He believed in his father's ability and believed that the southern region would become better and better under his leadership. Most importantly, therefore, he was free. In the imperial garden, Lin Feng was completely at ease. With 2 deputy region masters, there was no need to worry about anything else. His father was in charge of internal affairs, and Shun was in charge of external affairs. The division of labor was clear, and he mainly focused on cultivation. Just like in the kingdom of Maru, there was no need to explain how important a leader with absolute power was. What would happen to the witch Emperor Jiang if the witch race did not have him? What would happen to the demon race if they did not have a great sage? In the Douling world, the strong were respected. Heavenly Spirit was strong and was only stronger than the witch race and the demon race. Why could they only hibernate? One of the reasons was that it was difficult for the various neutral races to integrate. Another reason was that Heavenly Spirit did not have a real powerhouse who could convince the masses and stand out. He was comparable to the witch Emperor Jiang and the Great Sage. In the secret chamber, Lin Feng sat cross-legged with a serious expression. In front of him, there was a treasure that all powerhouses dreamed of, the Earth Pillar. It was one of the 3 heavenly treasures. My main body already has the Shield of Truth. It's enough. In addition, the Earth Pillar seems to be used by a heavenly warrior. My main body mainly cultivates the heavenly god lineage. It's not suitable. I should make the best use of it. Lin Feng muttered softly. After hesitating for a while, he decided to cooperate with the Earth Pillar. Even though this heavenly treasure was quite fierce, and even a supreme existence like the Great Sage was accidentally devoured by it, one could imagine how dangerous the Earth Pillar was. However, there was always danger. If he wanted to quickly increase his strength, How could he not take some risks? And the earth pillar was definitely the best choice. The strength of my doppelganger is now inferior to my main body. It's only at the level of a demonic emperor. If I want to improve further and surpass my main body to compete with which Emperor Jiang and the Grey Great Sage, I can only rely on him. Lin Feng's gaze was deep. He knew very well how powerful a heavenly treasure was, after which Emperor Jiang merged with the heavenly ark, his strength more than doubled. After the Great Sage merged with the Earth Pillar, he was also reborn. Of course, the backlash after merging with the Earth Pillar was not included, and he believed that there would be no problem either. However, all of these were just his own thoughts. It was easier said than done to cooperate with a heavenly treasure. If he wanted to forcefully merge with it like the Great Sage, let alone a year, with his strength, he might not be able to do it even after 8 to 10 years. He might even be devoured by the weapon spirit that devoured his master and lose his life. Back then, when he merged with the Shield of Truth, it was a fusion of bloodlines. There was also a bit of luck involved. However, if the Shield of Truth could do it, it did not mean that the Earth Pillar could. Many times, one could not jump to conclusions. Phew! After letting out a long breath, Lin Feng's slightly confused eyes slowly lit up. Whether it was possible or not, he would know once he tried. Earth Pillar. Lin Feng looked at the Earth Pillar in front of him that did not have any luster. He was indeed a little afraid. However, since he had made a decision, there was no need to hesitate. First, he would see if he had fate with this heavenly treasure. If he did, it would be like the Shield of Truth. Once he touched it, immediately. Can I have it? Lin Feng's eyes lit up. With a hint of anticipation and complicated emotions, Lin Feng slowly extended his right hand. 20,000. First, I'll fulfill my promise. No more nonsense, continue writing. Xiao Xiao will use writing to accompany everyone on New Year's Eve. Chapter 1572. What would the answer be? Lin Feng was looking forward to it. His bright eyes showed his thoughts. Actually, he wanted to have it. His body contained the blood of madness. He reached out his right hand slowly and got closer. The Earth Pillar was close to him. The originally dim luster seemed to emit a faint luster as his right hand got closer. His heartbeat became faster and faster. The thumping sound was not only in his heart, but also in his ears. Lin Feng pursed his lips and felt the nervousness and apprehension in his heart. Hua! A white light shone in front of him. Lin Feng's eyes widened. Got it. Purring! His head seemed to explode. Lin Feng's whole body trembled slightly. His heart trembled. He instantly felt his heart and consciousness enter a mysterious world. It was grotesque and variegated. It emitted a special aura. It was familiar. That day when he merged with the Shield of Reality, wasn't it the same? At the thought of this, Lin Feng felt a surge of excitement in his heart. Did this mean that he was about to merge with the Earth Pillar? The heart contract was so familiar. Every beat of his heart seemed to be connected to the pulse here. It was strange yet familiar. Majestic, and powerful. It was as heavy as a mountain, and boundless pressure came from all directions. Boom! An earth-shattering sound. In an instant, a giant appeared in front of his eyes. It was indomitable. It was all too familiar. Like a huge tower, it held up the whole world. One hand held up the sky and the other supported the ground. It had a domineering aura that made people unable to reach it. Pangu. His eyes were exactly the same as his original bodies. As expected, Lin Feng's heart trembled slightly. At this moment, he had already slowly regained his calm state of mind. That day, when he merged with the Shield of Reality, such a scene appeared. However, at that time, he didn't know who this giant was. Now everything was clear and he understood everything. The 3 heavenly treasures were formed from the last essence of the 12 ancestral shamans. The 12 ancestral shamans were Pangu's flesh and blood. In other words, these 3 heavenly treasures were actually the power that Pangu possessed. Hua, the illusion disappeared quickly. Lin Feng closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He knew what was going to happen, and what was going to happen. The energy of the earth pillar would fuse with his soul. This was the most direct connection, the most intimate connection, the connection between their hearts. There was no need to worry about the earth pillar rebelling. It was just like signing a master-servant contract with a magical beast. Once he fused with the earth pillar, he would truly possess it. But 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, time passed slowly like an hourglass. What should have happened did not happen. After waiting for a full minute, the calmness on Lin Feng's face slowly changed, revealing a look of surprise and confusion. Lin Feng slowly opened his eyes and frowned. What exactly happened? The whole process was exactly the same as the Shield of Truth, so why did it suddenly stop at the last step? His heart was filled with doubt. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. He was still surrounded by that wonderful world, but at this moment, he seemed to have sensed something. Aura? Lin Feng was slightly startled, and his heart could not help but tremble. In this unique space world, he actually sensed the existence of an external aura. It was very weak, but it was so obvious. It was as if there was a small black dot on the snow-white wall. No matter how small the black dot was, it was so clear. This space was like this, monotonous and simple. Therefore, he could clearly sense this weak aura at this moment. What was it? Swoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and he was very curious. The aura was covered by the energy of the earth pillar. He could not sense it clearly, as if it was covered by a mask. With a thought, Lin Feng immediately followed the direction of the feeling. His figure flashed a few times, and his consciousness changed. In an instant, he entered the depths of the earth pillar's space. Light and shadow overlapped in front of him, one after another. Finally, he saw the light and saw the area where the feeling was. Hiss! Lin Feng looked forward and took a deep breath. His eyes widened and his expression changed greatly. No way! What did he see? Great Sage! It was the Great Sage! It was completely different from his consciousness. At this moment, the Great Sage was much smaller than him, but he was a real existence. He had flesh and blood, and the aura of his soul was very obvious. Like an enraged beast, he was madly struggling in a mucosa-like space. The mucosa-like space was constantly wriggling, and rays of light with strong power seemed to be slowly corroding the Great Sage. Witnessing this scene with his own eyes was too shocking. He originally thought that the Great Sage had died from the backlash, but he underestimated the vitality of the strongest demon. His talent was the strongest and most terrifying existence he had ever seen, even surpassing that of Shaman Emperor Jiang. Even his soul could survive the full force of the Pangu pupil's attack, and this was when his soul was not at its peak after the endless battle with the Earth Pillar's spirit. So that's how it is. Lin Feng looked ahead and nodded. It seemed that although the Earth Pillar had attacked its master, it did not completely kill the Great Sage. Thinking about it, the fact that the Great Sage could forcefully merge with the Earth Pillar proved one thing, and that was the power of the Great Sage's soul was actually stronger than that of the Earth Pillar's spirit. The reaction was mutual, and it took a lot of time. The Great Sage had been fighting with the spirit, and the Great Sage was constantly exhausting the power of his soul. However, wasn't the spirit doing the same? Therefore, although the final attack seemed very strong, it was actually just taking advantage of the fact that the Great Sage's soul was being greatly exhausted by its attacks. The Earth Pillar's spirit had not truly killed the Great Sage. However, soon. Lin Feng's eyes sparkled. It had been a long time since the battle that day. From the state of the Great Sage's aura, it could be seen that he was truly an arrow at the end of its flight. Without the replenishment of his body, It was already quite heaven-defying for him to be able to persist until now with just his talent and willpower. However, the Earth Pillar was different. This was its home ground, and it had the absolute advantage. It could naturally exhaust the great sage's power while absorbing the power of heaven and earth. It was like a spider slowly torturing its prey to death. The great sage's aura was constantly weakening. In that sealed space, no matter how much the great sage struggled, it was useless. His power was getting weaker and weaker. Previously, he was unable to break free from the Earth Pillar's spirit. Now, it was even more impossible because his power was reaching its limit. He was going to lose. He was going to lose because he was careless, because he underestimated his opponent. What a pity, Lin Feng thought to himself, his eyes sparkling. To be honest, he admired the great sage. He was a true martial artist, and in some ways, he was very similar to himself deep in his heart. However, he could not save him, nor would he save him. After all, they were enemies. 22,000 continue. Chapter 1573. No wonder I couldn't fuse with the Earth Pillar even though I was already compatible with it. For the final step, the soul mate zero never appeared. It was because of him. Lin Feng murmured. He finally understood. The great sage was still in the Earth Pillar, which meant that he had to move into a house. However, the original owner of the house hadn't moved out yet. Naturally, he couldn't move in. Only after the great sage's body and soul were destroyed and devoured could he truly possess the Earth Pillar. But was this really his original intention? Lin Feng pursed his lips and frowned. Looking at the trapped great sage, he couldn't help but think of himself and the southern region. Wasn't it the same for himself and the southern region? Trapped by the witch tribe and the demon tribe, they seemed to be able to survive, but in reality, they were struggling for their lives. The great sage was really giving it his all. Even if he lost all hope and knew that there was no way out, he didn't accept his fate. He didn't want to give up even if there was only a sliver of hope. He was doing his best to survive. He was stubborn and stubborn. He could even feel that the great sage had seen him, but he didn't even look him in the eye. He didn't even think of asking for help. Although he was from the demon clan, he was a true warrior with an indomitable spirit. He had an extremely strong self-esteem. He had the heart of a true martial artist. Roar! He could almost hear the great sage's hysterical roar. He didn't want to accept his fate. He wanted to control reality. He was angry at the heavens. He didn't want to admit defeat. He didn't want to die in such a cowardly manner. However, fate made fools of people. Looking at him was like looking at himself in the past. He used to give up everything for the sake of his obsession. Even if he knew that it was a dead end, he still stubbornly walked down it. He wouldn't give up until the last moment. This kind of spirit was moving. Many times, many things could be decided with a single thought. One thought could be good, one thought could be evil, one thought could go to heaven, one thought could go to hell. When faced with the same situation, everyone's choices and actions would be different. Just like Lin Feng now. His previous thoughts had changed. He felt the great sage's spirit and his will to never give up. Somehow, he didn't want to watch him die. Give him a hand. But how could he help? In this area that did not belong to him, in the space of the Earth Pillar, his strength was also very insignificant. Lin Feng's eyes flickered. His body shifted and arrived outside the mucosal space. He frowned slightly as he looked at the mucosal space. He had a feeling that he did not know where to start. But their eyes met, and then the great sage turned to stare at Lin Feng. He didn't say anything, but the look in his eyes was incomparably complicated. Lin Feng knew very well that the great sage wasn't stupid. He knew why Lin Feng had come out of the mucosal space. However, they were on opposing sides. In fact, when he had barged into the demonic race's forbidden land, the great sage had shown no mercy and wanted to kill him without mercy. But now, he had to accept the enemy's favor. It was no wonder that the great sage had a complicated expression on his face. If it were him, he would probably feel the same way. However, Lin Feng didn't care what the great sage thought. Do what you need to do. Most of the time, it might not be a bad thing to follow your heart. Wasn't it tiring to think about everything carefully? Even if he rescued the great sage, so what? At most, he would fight him fair and square. However, whether or not the great sage had the ability to fight was another matter. Also, what would happen to the gray energy occupying the great sage's body? There were too many implications. If he really wanted to think about it, he wouldn't be able to come to a definite conclusion. As for himself, right now he had to rescue the great sage first. Lin Feng reached out and touched the mucosal space's mucosal wall. It wasn't sticky. It looked soft, but it was actually formed from dense energy. Lin Feng frowned slightly. He didn't know how to break through the mucosal wall. It was actually very simple to rescue the great sage. As long as he could break through the mucosal wall, the great sage would be free. However, this simple step had stumped him. Only his consciousness had entered the Earth Pillar's space. There was also, yes, the power of the soul. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The Earth Pillar was prepared to merge with him. The power of the soul was intertwined. Right now, it wasn't just his consciousness that stood here. There was also a portion of the power of the soul. What did it mean to possess the power of the soul? It meant power. Even if the one standing here wasn't his real body, the power of the soul was still power. He would know once he tried. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He focused his mind and instantly felt the presence of the power of the soul. His hands were pressed against the mucosal wall of the Earth Pillar. The power of the soul surged out and began to attack. Indeed, the human soul of the doppelganger didn't have any offensive abilities. However, that only applied to the attacks of heavenly soul masters. Here, however, was different. This was a world of pure souls. His own soul, the great sage's soul, was in a wrestling ring. They were fighting barehanded, and the opponent was the artifact spirit of the Earth Pillar, who had the geographical advantage. Rumble! Rumble! The space trembled. Lin Feng's heart sank. He could faintly feel the anger of the Earth Pillar. Lin Feng laughed bitterly and sighed. He had been too impulsive. He had completely forgotten what kind of existence the Earth Pillar was. Its spirit was truly intelligent. How could it not sense his attack? However, he had already done it. What else could he do? I'm afraid that even if I give up now, the possibility of merging with the Earth Pillar in the future is extremely small. Lin Feng smiled helplessly. His mistake had led him to the opposite side of the Earth Pillar's spirit. Perhaps if he didn't save the Great Sage now, the Great Sage's body and soul would be destroyed in no time. He would be completely swallowed by the Earth Pillar's spirit. At that time, he would be able to merge with the Earth Pillar and the power of his doppelganger would rise to another level. However, there were no ifs in this world. None of this could happen again. Fine, it's fate. Lin Feng's eyes flashed coldly. He was destined to have no fate with the Earth Pillar. It was the same for the first time and the second time. Even if he merged with the Earth Pillar, there was no guarantee that it wouldn't attack him again in the future. There was no turning back. Since he had already done it, he might as well cut the weeds and get rid of the roots. Come! Lin Feng shouted, his eyes shining brightly. Vast amounts of soul power surged out of his head and struck the thin mucous membrane. At this moment, as if he had heard his own voice, the Great Sage's originally dim eyes suddenly lit up. He clenched his fists and roared. As if he had ignited the blood of the beast in his body, he charged forward again. Bang! Bang! He attacked desperately. Although the Great Sage was an arrow at the end of its flight, he was still quite smart. He knew that good steel should be used on the blade. He didn't attack the other membrane, but the membrane where Lin Feng was. He gathered his strength and poured out his remaining soul power. He knew very well that this was his last and only chance. If he didn't succeed, he would die trying. Either he didn't do it or he would do it thoroughly. Lin Feng threw caution to the wind. Although the entire space shook violently and the earth pillar's angry voice sounded in his mind, he couldn't care less. Attack after attack, the membrane became thinner and thinner, and the energy leaked out quickly. Boom, boom, boom. The entire space shook as if it was about to collapse. Lin Feng's eyes were deep. He didn't care at all. It was just a wisp of his soul power here. Even if he was buried here, he would only lose a little soul power. It wouldn't cause much harm to his clone. Suddenly, a small figure of light appeared in his mind. Lin Feng's heart trembled. The earth pillar's weapon spirit? He saw that the small figure of light was unusually anxious. It even lowered its head and begged for mercy, as if it wanted him to let it go. The anger from before was completely gone. The weapon spirit now was quite comical, like a dream. Lin Feng was moved. It was real. The exchange of souls between souls is equal. Perhaps the Earth Pillar's weapon spirit was originally very strong, but after going through battle after battle, and being continuously exhausted by the Great Sage, it's probably an arrow at the end of its flight. Therefore, although my soul power isn't strong, but with the Great Sage's remaining strength, it's just enough to kill it. It was indeed a mistake. Lin Feng was moved. He sighed slightly. Instantly, his eyes darkened, and the image in his mind was blocked. What's done is done. What's there to regret? From the subtle clues, this Earth Pillar's weapon spirit was definitely not a good person. It was a complete villain. It was angry and threatened before. Now that it was about to lose its life, it didn't even care about its dignity. Fortunately, he didn't fuse with it. Otherwise, it would be a ticking time bomb in his body that would explode at any time. In comparison, the Great Sage was much more open and aboveboard. The 9 sons of the dragon were all different, but that didn't mean that the artifact spirits born from heavenly treasures were all outstanding. Artifact spirits and artifact spirits were born from the artifact spirit before the artifact spirit. There were too many factors involved in the birth of an artifact spirit. Its growth and emergence of wisdom were also influenced by various factors. Not every artifact spirit was the same. Take Wing for example. His personality was greatly influenced by the first martial artist he devoured. If he were to start over, he would definitely have a different personality. Actually, it's not necessarily a bad thing, Lin Feng thought. Such an outstanding heavenly treasure has such an unsightly weapon spirit. It's an insult to the Earth Pillar. If I destroy it, I believe that a weapon spirit born under the Earth Pillar will be much better. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. His mind was even more resolute. At this moment, under his and the Great Sage's concerted efforts, the membrane was getting thinner and thinner. Its luster was also gradually dimming. The collapse of the surrounding space was getting smaller and smaller. It was as if it had lost all its strength. An inaudible voice sounded in his mind. Lin Feng ignored it. Break. Lin Feng's eyes widened. Soul power surged out. Boom. The membrane's energy instantly shattered. The entire Earth Pillar's space shook violently. A wave of energy disappeared in an instant. 25,000. Continue writing. Prepare for the new year. Xiao Xiao has already gone crazy. Haha. Chapter 1574. Bang. Like a firework explosion. The membrane was shattered. Although only one side was shattered, the entire membrane space had lost its luster and was devoid of life. It was like a cultivator losing his life force. Simply put, it was the death of the soul. The one who had died was the Earth Pillar's spirit. It was the powerful existence that had transformed into this membrane space. Perhaps its soul was indeed powerful and had reached the starry sky level, but it had been exhausted after countless battles with the great saint. Coupled with Lin Feng's sudden intervention, it was caught off guard. It was exactly the same as when it had devoured the great saint. There was a cause and there was an effect. The spirit was dead. The entire space shook violently and was about to disappear. Looking at the great saint who had lost all his strength and was lying on the ground, Lin Feng's eyes flashed. He didn't say anything and didn't expect anything in return. Although he didn't know whether his mistake was good or bad, there was no need to regret it. Whether it was right or wrong, he would know in the future. But now, everything was a foregone conclusion. Looking at the exhausted great saint, Lin Feng breathed a sigh of relief. Without saying anything, he closed his eyes and disappeared. This was all he could do to help him. Whoosh! When he regained consciousness, Lin Feng's eyes flashed and he could see clearly. He had come out of the Earth Pillar's space. It felt like a lifetime had passed. The scenes from before were still clearly imprinted in his mind. The battle in the Earth Pillar's space was as intense as a fight between two evenly matched opponents. What had he done? Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh. He also felt that his impulsiveness was laughable. If it was before, he would absolutely not do such a thing. However, after he had removed the heavy burden from his shoulders, his entire person seemed to have changed a lot. He looked at the Earth Pillar. At this moment, the Earth Pillar didn't have any luster. It was like an inanimate object, lying quietly on the ground. Without its spirit, it was just a pure and simple weapon, staff. Although it was still a heavenly treasure, it had lost its ability to turn something rotten into something magical. But in terms of the quality of the staff, there was probably nothing in the entire Douling world that could surpass it. Lin Feng smiled. He could only find joy in his misery. A heavenly treasure was now a piece of scrap metal. He didn't know anything about staff technique. Moreover, the clone already had the Doomsday Spear and no longer needed other weapons. I wonder what the great sage will do? Lin Feng's eyes sparkled as he stared at the Earth Pillar. He believed that the great sage was still trapped within the Earth Pillar's dimension. In truth, the great sage had nowhere to go. Losing his fleshly body was akin to becoming a wandering ghost. He was most likely residing within the Earth Pillar's dimension. Did he still have a chance to come back to life? He didn't know and he couldn't care less. She had already helped him to this point. Whether he was a dragon or a snake from now on would depend on his own luck. Thinking of this, Lin Feng couldn't help but nod his head. He let out a sigh of relief and stood up. Just as he was frowning and pondering, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Lin Feng was startled and instantly regained his senses. His gaze landed on the pillar that was lying quietly on the ground. Whoosh! Golden light suddenly burst forth. Lin Feng's eyes widened and his heart thumped. The originally dim Earth Pillar seemed to suddenly have a soul and strangely came to life. This brilliant golden light was so familiar. It was extremely similar to the Earth Pillar that he saw on Demon Emperor Island. Could it be his? Lin Feng took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with shock. It was too shocking. It wasn't just the golden light. A familiar aura also slowly appeared. The Earth Pillar suddenly rose into the air. The brilliant golden light covered the entire area and formed a golden shadow. It was a figure that he was extremely familiar with. It had a robust body and muscles that were filled with explosive power. It also had a pair of clear eyes that were filled with fighting spirit. The fiery red gaze slowly gathered, but the gaze that was looking at him was extremely complicated. The great sage, the entity formed by the golden shadow, was undoubtedly the great sage. Moreover, this wasn't an illusion. It was the great sage who truly had an ideology. Just from the changes in his eyes, one could tell. Lin Feng gently pursed his lips. His expression was both shocked and complicated. He vaguely understood what had happened. Was it because of his careless decision that he had saved his mortal enemy? Lin Feng, the great sage, suddenly opened his mouth. His expression was serious. Phew, Lin Feng let out a long breath and smiled faintly. I didn't expect you to still remember my name. The great sage's fiery red eyes flashed. He looked at Lin Feng. After a long time, he said, I owe you my life. After saying that, he didn't seem to know what to say or how to face Lin Feng. The great sage suddenly turned around and left. Lin Feng was left alone. He looked at the golden light that slowly disappeared before his eyes. After a long time, he shook his head with a bitter smile. Wasn't this considered as losing the bait after the bait? He had saved an enemy who was even more powerful than himself. He had even sacrificed the heavenly treasure, the earth pillar. His mistake was quite a big one. Lin Feng let out a long sigh. There was nothing he could do. He had already done it. What else could he do? Actually, when the great sage was revived, he had already thought of this. He had forgotten one thing. The great sage was actually the earth pillar's master. He wasn't a parasite. He had once perfectly merged with the earth pillar. Now that the artifact's spirit was dead, he was the only one in control. Naturally, he could control the earth pillar. It was even possible that he had taken over the role of the artifact's spirit. One soul for two. Why couldn't it? The heavenly treasure was so powerful. How hard could it be to create a physical body? With the earth pillar as his physical body, I'm afraid he's immortal. Such an opponent. Lin Feng closed his eyes. He felt a headache coming on. The trouble was getting bigger. After a long time, Lin Feng slowly opened his eyes. He muttered to himself, not necessarily. Different bodies have different strength. Not to mention how long it will take to adapt to a new body. It's still unknown how much of the great sage's strength this transformed body can unleash. Moreover, the great sage's soul was severely damaged. I'm afraid he won't be able to fight for a while. Also, there are two great sages. If they want to fight, they should fight first. Including which Emperor Jiang. Let them fight to their heart's content. At least it's my turn to fight until the victor is decided, right? Why would I have a headache? Lin Feng sneered. If there was a headache, it should be which Emperor Jiang. One great sage was troublesome enough. Two great sages, I can totally imagine what kind of expression he'll have. Actually, from another perspective, the resurrection of the great sage didn't do any harm to me. It wasn't his fault that he wanted to kill me that day. It was me who angered him. He barged into the demon emperor's forbidden ground and massacred the elites of the demon race. If I were in his shoes, I would have done the same. With the great sage's personality, I'm indebted to him for saving his life. This is a fact that won't change. In the future, even if I can't become friends with the great sage, at least I won't be enemies. On the contrary, because of this change, another unstable factor was added to the already chaotic situation between the witch and demon race. To the southern region and the humans, the more chaotic the Douling world was, the better. The more confusing the battle situation was, the more benefits the humans could gain from it and buy time. The only regret was, the heavenly treasure is lost again. Lin Feng smiled bitterly and shook his head. He was destined to not have the earth pillar. Losing the earth pillar was not a small loss to Lin Feng, but it was a foregone conclusion. Lin Feng wouldn't feel sorry for himself. Time was tight. As the human emperor, Lin Feng had to cultivate at the fastest speed and increase his strength to face all kinds of situations. Since there was a first time, there would be a second and third time. He didn't know when the witch and demon race would target the southern region and him again. Even though the two races were at war and wouldn't rest until one of them died, one could never be too careful. Only by making sufficient preparations would one not be afraid of sudden changes. Be prepared for danger in times of peace. In the secret chamber, Lin Feng sat cross-legged. countless star origin stones were placed in front of him. That's right, they were the rare items that he had plundered from the Demon Emperor Island. After spending a total of 47 billion wizard coins worth of star origin stones, there was still quite a large amount left. Lin Feng did a rough calculation and found that the remaining amount was about 25 billion wizard coins worth of star origin stones. These 25 billion wizard coins worth of star origin stones were just a drop in the ocean to the Netherworld ship. It was useless. However, to Lin Feng himself, they were very useful. Absorb and refine. These were star origin stones that were born from the heavens and earth. They contained the true power of heaven and earth and the true star origin energy. According to Duo, the purity was quite good. If he absorbed these star origin stones, his cultivation speed would increase by leaps and bounds. It would far surpass his cultivation speed that was as slow as a turtle. Print. A breakthrough from high-order Saint King Realm to peak Saint King Realm. Hiss! Hiss! Lin Feng absorbed as much as he could. The more capacity his body had, the faster his absorption speed would be. Lin Feng was completely immersed in his cultivation. His clone's talent was not bad. His cultivation speed was also quite shocking. Even though he was still a distance away from the great Saint King Dijiang of the Douling world, this comparison was not appropriate. How long had his clone cultivated? Not to mention the old monster wizard Dijiang, how long had the great saint cultivated? Each of them had cultivated for much longer than his clone. Therefore, the battle techniques they had comprehended and the mysteries they had grasped were superior. Although they were both from the Ursa Major constellation, Lin Feng's attainments in both the path of metal and the path of strength were weaker than that of a great sage. Even the great sage's weakest path of space was much stronger than Lin Feng's. A battle between Saint Kings was very important for the comprehension of the Tao of origin. However, the comprehension of the Tao depended on the timing. It needed time to settle down. It could not be achieved overnight. Compared to the Tao that he did not know when he would be able to comprehend it, Lin Feng was more inclined to improve his strength in a short period of time. For example, treasures, strength level, and so on. First, he had to close these small gaps and improve those that could be improved first. After that, he would slowly close the gap in the comprehension of the Tao. 28,000. I still have energy left. I'll write one more chapter and break through the 30,000 mark. If I'm going to update, I'll update to my heart's content. Xiao will celebrate the new year with everyone. Chapter 1575. From high-level Saint King Realm to peak Saint King Realm, it was neither long nor short. Even if Lin Feng had sufficient astral origin stones, he would still have a long way to go. However, that was not a big deal. The southern region had Shun and Lin Xiaotian watching over it. It could be said that everything was stable without any openings. Especially the new policies that Lin Xiaotian issued, they made up for the southern region's lack of resources, restoring the faith of Emperor Yao and further strengthening it. After all, when Emperor Yao was on the throne, the southern region was as poor as a church mouse. Compared to Lin Feng's current wealth, the difference was like heaven and earth. Money wasn't everything, but it was impossible to do anything without money, especially when it came to managing a region. The new policies were quickly implemented. Praises for the new deputy domain Lord Lin Xiaotian could be heard in various continents and counties. Sometimes, people's hearts changed very quickly. The southern region continued to develop steadily. The flames of war between the shaman and demon tribes intensified with each passing day. Despite Huda's warning, Shi Juyin had always acted alone. Why would he pay attention to Hutu? If Shaman Emperor Jiang was here, perhaps Shi Juyin would listen to him. But Hutu, who was he? Kill. Seeing the demonic beast army's morale plummeting, how could Shi Juyin let go of such a good opportunity? Not to mention, the shaman tribe's army could no longer hold back. One by one, the shaman tribe's experts rushed out like wolves and tigers. The resentment and killing intent that had been accumulating for a long time exploded. In an instant, the demonic beast army's wails and howls were heard. They fought and fled. The demonic beast army was routed. Ha ha ha! Sir Juin laughed wantonly. This time, he was elated. Defeating the demonic beast army, killing countless demonic beasts, this kind of battle merit was enough to erase some of his misdeeds when he was the shaman emperor. The past was easy to forget, especially when these misdeeds were covered up bit by bit. Soon they will only remember that I, Sir Juin, beat the demonic beast army back to the sea. I, Sir Juin, am the true successor of the shaman emperor. Hovering in the air, he commanded the shaman tribe's army. Sir Juin was in high spirits, and his might was unparalleled in the world. Under his command, the sorcerer race's army was invincible. Their repeated victories had given the sorcerer race's army a kind of blind confidence. The demon race was nothing more than this. There was nothing to fear at all. However, they had forgotten, previously, how did the demons beat them to the point that they couldn't go out? How foolish! Lam Tok Ti sneered. You need strength but not brains. Fox G giggled. The sorcerer tribe really thinks that Lord Commander is dead. I wonder who started the rumor. Really, if you want to make up something, why don't you make it up better? When I first heard it, I was also shocked, Lam Tok Ti said indifferently, his eyes flashing. But with the commander's strength, who can kill him? That day, in a one-on-one battle, the commander had only lost to which Emperor Jiang and suffered some injuries. But, when you see the commander again, don't you feel that something is different? Light flashed in Fox Princess's beautiful eyes. Stronger than before? Not really. Lam Tok Ti shook his head, his brows slightly furrowed. The commander's aura has changed greatly. If not for his appearance, I would have suspected that he had changed into a different person. Fox G chuckled. Who cares if he changed or not, is it important? That's true. Lam Tok Ti said nonchalantly, his arm wrapped around Fox G's waist. After all, we're not on the same path. We're just using each other to get what we need. Me too. Fox G's charming eyes fluttered as she stared at Lam Tok Ti. Why would you agree? Lam Tok Ti laughed heartily. Kill, kill, kill. The sorcerer tribe's army was in a frenzy, including Sir Juin himself. He led the way, tearing the demonic beast experts into pieces. The entire battlefield was filled with the smell of blood. The demonic beast experts were routed, retreating in defeat, while the sorcerer tribe's army chased after them. Battle merits. Huge amounts of battle merits. At this moment, other than battle merits, there was nothing else in Sir Juin's eyes. But he had forgotten one of the greatest dangers in war, advancing rashly due to greed. Even though there are no Saint King Realm Masters in this demonic beast army, there are many of them. Killing all of these defeated demonic beast experts is equivalent to killing a dozen Saint King Realm Masters. It will also arouse the sorcerer tribe's domineering aura, pushing them to attack the demonic beast army's next line of defense. Again and again, do it in one go. Sir Juin's eyes glimmered as he sped forward. Suddenly, wait! Sir Juin was startled, but he suddenly felt something was wrong. This was a familiar rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. His heartbeat quickened, and Sir Juin felt a bone-chilling cold, as if his spine was frozen stiff. He felt something was wrong, but he couldn't pinpoint what it was. The battle was going too smoothly, so smoothly that he couldn't feel the demonic beast army's resistance. It was as if they were slaughtering a group of weak humans. This. Sir Juin's throat went dry. In that instant, Sir Juin's eyes shone brightly. He yelled, Stop quickly! Sir Juin roared at the top of his lungs. Using all his strength, he screamed hysterically. An image appeared in Shi Juin's mind. It was a battle he had never experienced, but he had heard of countless times. No, it should be called a tragedy, the Battle of the Fallen Shaman Mountain Range. It was that time when the sorcerer tribe suffered a crushing defeat, losing the initiative and losing several cities to the demonic beast army. It was an extremely miserable time. This time it was so similar. Boom! A deafening rumble of thunder resounded. Like a thunderclap, the terrifying power seemed to shatter the space around them. It was so terrifying that even the sky felt like it was going to shatter. Even if Shi Juin shouted, it was too late. He couldn't control the frenzied sorcerer tribe experts, and he couldn't even control himself. A sudden change occurred. Bang! 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 The earth quaked, mountains crumbled, and the earth cracked. As the thunderclap reverberated, the blood on the ground and the stench of blood in the air evaporated in an instant. A terrifying aura spread out in all directions. Zheng! Rumble, rumble! The earth shook and the sky shook. Even the color of the sky darkened, and the shrill cries of evil spirits resounded in the void. Boom! 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 Mountains collapsed one after another. The earth had completely collapsed, and even the sky had changed color. The entire space was shrouded by a terrifying power. Demonic beasts and devils danced in the air, and lightning flashed in the sky, as if they wanted to scatter the evil spirits' souls. The terrifying aura condensed into a magnetic force, and a terrifying power arose. Rumble, rumble, rumble! The mountains collapsed, and strange patterns appeared in the middle of the collapsed mountains. The patterns were pitch black with a hint of blood red, dazzling to the eyes. It was blood. The blood-red color covered the entire mountain range. The blood seeped into the pitch-black patterns, mixing with the patterns, creating a strange power that resonated with each other. The patterns flickered with a black light, like a magnetic pole, and connected, dividing the space. The mountain peaks formed natural magnetic poles, and each of the patterns seemed to be the birth of a demonic power. Blood Fiend 10,000 Ghosts Formation. The terrifying forbidden array that had knocked the sorcerer tribe into the bottomless abyss that day appeared once again. The only difference was that Shaman King Gomang was the one who had suffered the last time, and this time, it was Shi Juin. Ha! What a stupid sorcerer tribe! Lam Tok T's eyes lit up and he sneered. Indeed, they still haven't learned their lesson after falling for it once. Yuji pursed her lips. How boring. I even prepared a backup plan for them. Who would have thought that they would trigger the Blood Fiend 10,000 Ghosts array before they could even pass the first stage? They really thought that the Great Saint was dead, and the morale of the demon race's army was low. Lam Tok T laughed. In fact, they just beat them at their own game. They were blinded by victory. The sorcerer tribe is nothing more than this. Yuji's eyes were like silk and she smiled sweetly. Last time, Di Jiang saved them. This time, I'm afraid Di Jiang has no time to spare. Lam Tok T laughed heartily. Commander, Deputy Commander, no matter how strong Di Jiang is, I'm afraid he will have to return with a grievance. Yuji covered her mouth and chuckled. Her bell-like laughter was filled with confidence, as if she was predicting the outcome of this war. Chaos. The densely packed sorcerer tribe experts were in a complete mess at this moment. As the ground caved in, lightning flashed in the sky, making it impossible for them to escape. The magnetic pole had an extremely strong binding force, as if it had tied them up in the void, making them unable to move at all. Shi Juin's expression was extremely ugly. At this moment, he had already reacted, but it was already too late. Catching a turtle in a jar. Who? A terrifying disaster had finally arrived. The magnetic pole's power exploded, and various kinds of magnetic light flashed wildly, fluctuating violently. Black carvings mixed with blood, tearing the space apart, and ghost-like cracks appeared. In the cracks, countless ghost soldiers suddenly appeared, with ghostly colors, holding battle blades, and a terrifying aura descended. Saint-level ghost soldiers. Bang, bang, bang. It was a complete mess. The ghost soldiers and the magnetic light formed a line, crazily attacking the sorcerer tribe's army. The Blood Fiend 10,000 Ghosts formation once again displayed its miraculous effect. The sorcerer tribe's army led by Shi Jiuyin were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. At this moment they were completely dumbfounded. Their originally high morale had long since dissipated. The sorcerer tribe was facing a great calamity. On the other side, an earth-shattering battle was about to break out. In midair, Bull Demon and the Great Sage had surrounded Di Jiang. In terms of strength, either one of them was not enough to trap Di Jiang, but with the two of them working together, no matter how strong Di Jiang was, there was nothing he could do. The Bull Demon's wounds were glaring, dripping with blood. Even the Great Sage had suffered some injuries. 2 against 1, Di Jiang was not at a disadvantage. Too strong. His strength was bottomless. However, which Emperor Zhang's expression was rather ugly as he stepped on the heavenly arc. Even though he had an absolute advantage in terms of speed and agility, he could only injure the Bull Demon King or the Great Saint at most. It would be rather difficult to deal a heavy blow to either of them. Not to mention that the two were extremely powerful, just their coordination alone was exquisite. They would not give him any good chances at all. Di Jiang's situation was not as advantageous as it seemed. 31,000. The final sprint for the end of the year is over. Xiao Xiao was completely exhausted, but she was still very excited, haha. To be honest, Xiao Xiao had never tried to write so many words in a day. The most she had ever written before was 15,000, but this time, 25,000 in 1 day, 40,000 in 2 days, 55,000 in 3 days. She was really crazy. I'm going to celebrate the new year with everyone. The fire-refining starry sky is coming to an end. I hope everyone can continue to support Xiao Zhao's new book in the coming year. Xiao Xiao promises that the new book's updates will definitely satisfy everyone. Chapter 1576. They were evenly matched. 2 against 1, Bull Demon and the Great Sage barely managed to fight Di Jiang to a draw. One could only imagine Di Jiang's true strength. His foundation was quite deep. Lin Feng was improving, the Great Sage was improving, and so was Di Jiang. Perhaps the speed of improvement was not as fast as Lin Feng and the Great Sage, but the sky arc that Di Jiang possessed was completely different. It was a heavenly treasure, but it was also the essence that the 12 ancestors of sorcery had left for the descendants of the sorcerer tribe. To Lin Feng, the shield of truth was just a powerful treasure. To a great sage, the earth pillar was a powerful and handy weapon. But to Di Jiang, the sky arc was not only a weapon, but also a treasure and also an inheritance. It contained the hope and essence of the 12 ancestral witches. Otherwise, how could Di Jiang, who had been cultivating for so many years, have broken through in such a short time? He did not have the talent of Lin Feng and the Great Sage, but he was well prepared. After 2 great witch-demon wars, Di Jiang was now without a doubt the strongest person in the Douling world. Boom! Boom! The battle was extremely intense. Stepping on the sky arc, Di Jiang was like a formless wind. No matter how strong the Great Sage and Bull Demon were, they could not even touch a corner of his clothes. He had truly cultivated the sky arc to the 2nd stage. He and the sky arc became one. It was far beyond Lin Feng's use of the shield of truth, and the Great Sage's understanding of the earth pillar. The two were not on the same level at all. The path of space was already the best in the Douling world, and the sky arc was its strongest point. Even if Lin Feng's speed was faster than Di Jiang's, the battle was not about absolute speed, but speed in the sense, agility, dodging, explosive power, and so on. Even Lin Feng, who had the fastest speed in the Douling world, could not even touch a corner of Dijiang's clothes. Dijiang's strength was more than several times stronger than when he first fought the great sage. He maintained his extreme speed to dodge and dash, but did not even pant. With the strange changes of the path of space, Dijiang's sky arc was like the Grim Reaper's scythe, cold and sharp. Boom, boom, pung. Again and again, the bull demon's giant axe and the great sage's golden staff formed a barrier that restrained Dijiang. He couldn't leave. The barrier was easy to break, but how could there be so much time to cut through the barrier during a battle? Even if it was one-on-one, there might not be a chance, let alone one against two. Moreover, both of them were incomparably powerful existences. This was especially true for the great sage. His golden staff danced in the air as he unleashed a relentless barrage of attack. Dense gray energy enveloped his entire body, adding to his violent aura. His strength was terrifying to the extreme. What a strong killing intent! It's even stronger than before. Dijiang dodged, feeling apprehensive. His gaze fell on his left arm, where there was an inconspicuous wound. It was caused by the great sage just now. He's not dodging or evading. Such a suicidal way of fighting. Dijiang frowned and felt a headache coming on. In terms of physical fitness, he was far inferior to the great sage. Such a way of fighting where both sides would suffer was too dangerous for him, especially when there was a bull demon beside him, whose strength was only slightly inferior to the great sage. What to do? Dijiang was very anxious. Unfortunately, he wasn't in the ancestral Magi Palace at the moment. Otherwise, he would be able to see a strange phenomenon when he raised his head to look at the sky. Other than him, there was a dazzling star that was countless times more dazzling than before. Bam! Bam! Rumble! The confrontation was extremely intense. Dijiang clenched his teeth and didn't dare to act rashly. He knew that once he attacked the barrier, he would definitely lose the upper hand. At that time, he would be in a passive position and very likely be injured by the great sage and the bull demon. His physique was far inferior to the two great demon clans. Once he was injured, it was likely to snowball and get out of hand. Right now, he had to endure. Patiently wait for an opportunity, just like he did during the Second Great Witch Demon War. He could endure what others couldn't. But would there be a chance this time? The answer was yes. Clang! A dense watery light swept over with a strong space Tao and instantly appeared outside the barrier. The three great powerhouses who were fighting fiercely inside the barrier were all stunned. The change happened too suddenly, and they didn't expect it at all, especially when the barrier completely blocked out the aura of the outside world. Therefore, they couldn't even see who broke the barrier. However, how many people in the entire Douling world dared to interfere with the most powerful battle in the Douling world and could break the barrier set up by the great sage and the bull demon together? Who was it? The questions that appeared in the minds of the three great powerhouses were finally answered as the dense watery light fell for the first time. Mystery Aquarius Space. It was an extremely handsome young man with delicate features. His bright eyes stood upright and proud. His skin was translucent, and his fluttering hair set off his extreme beauty. He was a handsome man who looked like he was made by nature. He wore silver diamond-shaped earrings and had a peerless appearance that made all women feel ashamed. The super genius of the ancient race, Gu Sheng. He had returned. Back then, he had fought fiercely with the bull demon and Kuei Tu at the sorcerer tribe realm. The most powerful ancient race genius powerhouse in the Douling world had finally returned. He had come out of seclusion. However, looking at his current posture, one could tell that his strength was no longer the same as before. The dense water swirled around the barrier like a spiral, and the huge Aquarius exploded with a strong spatial explosion. Boom! 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 The destructive power was extremely powerful. Gu Xing had changed from winning with his skills in the past. Now, he had completely covered his past weaknesses. Failure wasn't the end. On the contrary, for many ancient martial art practitioners, failure was actually a learning process. It was a process of understanding oneself. Gu Xing, who had been carefully nurtured and was known as the future god of the ancient race, not only had extremely strong natural endowments, but he also had the heart of a man. The heart of a martial art practitioner. How could he admit defeat so easily? The first failure had created a supreme expert of the ancient race who had undergone a complete transformation. 12 royal constellations, Aquarius. Swoosh. 4 pairs of eyes met. Di Jiang and Gu Xing communicated through their eyes. There was no need for words. They already knew what was going on. With such a strong ally, Di Jiang was like a hidden dragon that had escaped from its cage. He no longer had any scruples. He didn't run away, and he wouldn't run away. Even if he didn't care about benevolence, righteousness, and morality, betraying such a strong ally would only bring him more harm than good. Fight. Di Jiang didn't hesitate to meet the great sage. His eyes were cold and clear, and his killing intent was awe-inspiring. He couldn't hold it in anymore. He had enough. The power that had been suppressed all this time finally erupted. On the other side, Bull Demon was waiting to help, but a huge spatial power descended in an instant. Gu Xing appeared with flashing eyes and growing confidence. The rich origin of water completely covered the entire area. He said indifferently, "Long time no see. I'm here again." The flames of war filled the sky. The shamans and demons were fighting to the death, and they were going all out. However, there were also many who were watching the show. Needless to say, Heavenly Spirit had been watching the show since the first Great Shaman-Demon War. During the Second Great Shaman-Demon War, they benefited from it and rose to become a powerful existence that the shamans and demons couldn't shake. The mysterious organization Extremity was secretly deploying and accumulating power, waiting for the best opportunity to overthrow the Do Ling world. Even the demons were fighting both openly and secretly. Originally, the demons might have been able to work together, but this time, they had invited a wolf into their house. Lam Tok Ti didn't just bring strategy and victory to the demons. He was also the core power of the demons that was slowly splitting apart. Sometimes, visible benefits couldn't be compared to invisible losses. And all of this had nothing to do with humans. The 8 Great Domain Alliance of the human race was now like an unpredictable grass. They didn't know where to lean. They thought that there was a soft persimmon to bully and wanted to bully the southern region. Who would have thought that they would be defeated? They suddenly realized that the southern region that they had always looked down on had now become a power that couldn't be underestimated. The southern region was developing vigorously. With a large amount of money and Lin Feng's power and status in Heavenly Spirit, the human race's power was increasing at a speed that was shocking. Every minute and every second, the southern region's power was rapidly increasing. However, compared to the sorcerer race, the demon race, and the heavenly spirit race, they were still worlds apart. It was impossible for them to catch up in a short period of time, unless a miracle happened. And for the southern region, the so-called miracle was a person, human sovereign Lin Feng. At this moment, he was working hard to cultivate. Lin Feng didn't borrow Duoduo's power. In fact, he couldn't. Duo could only provide him with some information. If he wanted to help him cultivate, he would have to use the nether ship's star source power. This obviously wasn't beneficial. For Lin Feng, it was a simple process to go from high-level Sage King Realm to Peak Sage King Realm. It wasn't complicated at all. Soon, success would follow naturally. Huff, huff. After a long and deep breath, Lin Feng closed his eyes and looked calm. A large number of star source stones were consumed, but he didn't feel any heartache because these were dead things. So what if they were priceless? The thing he didn't lack the most in Do Ling world was money. At this speed, I will be able to take the last step in 10 days. Peak Sage King Realm. Lin Feng clenched his fists and looked excited. He was only one step away from the top of the Do Ling world's pyramid. Stepping Star Mansion. In the heart-nourishing pool, his main body was soaking in it. He was constantly absorbing the essence of the star fruits to recover his soul power. Lin Feng had gained a lot from the trip to Demon Emperor Island. Although he had consumed a lot of soul power and still needed to soak in the heart-nourishing pool for a while to recover, the Pangu Eye alone was already extraordinary. He was now very clear about the origin of Do Ling world. Not only that, in the information brought by the Pangu Eye, there were many other things besides these historical memories, including power, the cultivation of abilities. As the Pangu Eye slowly recovered, those blurry information and words appeared little by little. After digging deeper and studying the Pangu Eye, he suddenly realized that it was like an endless treasure trove. What he saw was just a drop in the ocean. It was too huge. It was as if Pangu's memories were all imprinted in his mind at this moment. Pangu art. Lin Feng's eyes slowly lit up. Happy New Year, everyone. Chapter 1577. Pangu Technique. Something that can be stored in my memory should be good. I'll ask Toto when I have the chance. Lin Feng thought about it in his heart and felt helpless. After restarting the Netherworld ship, there was almost no difference. Toto was still in a state of deep sleep, but now he was active. According to Toto, he rarely slept, so he was woken up as soon as he yawned and closed his eyes. Then he willfully went back to sleep. Back to sleep. This is the temper of a starry sky artifact spirit, Lin Feng thought to himself and smiled bitterly. There were so many worlds that he could not understand at the moment. Thinking about it, for an artifact spirit that was already billions of years old, sleeping for a few decades was indeed not a problem. Previously, he had already slept for more than 330,000 years. 10 years? It was just a snap of a finger. It did not matter. He did not have much help along the way. Although the journey was bumpy, he still gained a lot. If Toto had not exhausted his energy and slept in the Tianwu continent, he might not have the strength he had now. One could rely on oneself. It's not complete yet. Lin Feng closed his eyes and frowned slightly. The Pangu technique in his memory seemed to be covered by a layer of black shadow at this moment. As his soul power recovered, the black shadow slowly faded, and the content of the Pangu technique gradually became visible. But just based on what he saw now, it seemed that it was not fated to be with the main body. The Pangu technique was prepared for Heaven Realm cultivators. That's right. If this Pangu technique is really related to Pangu, perhaps it is similar to the Secret Spear technique. And Pangu is a Heaven Realm cultivator. It was easy to guess the relationship. He was not very anxious. Anyway, his doppelganger was now busy, and there was still some time before it reached the peak of the Saint King realm. During this time, he could slowly recover his soul power and restore the power of the Pangu Eye. With the recovery speed of the heart-nourishing pool and the rare star fruits he obtained on Demon Emperor Island, he would be able to recover in less than half a month. However, is the main body really unable to cultivate the Pangu technique? Lin Feng thought. The main body had the Pangu Eye, but could not use the power of the Pangu Eye? Ugh, monster! Dijiang's eyes widened, and his chaotic face revealed deep shock. Boom! A mighty staff fell from the sky, revealing a terrifying power and pressure, as if it was going to tear the entire sky apart. The great sage's face was malevolent like an evil spirit. Gray energy covered his entire body, and at this moment, his steel-like body was incomparably terrifying. Numerous bone-deep wounds could be seen on his body, and a large piece of flesh was missing from his waist. It was as if he had been cut off by the heavenly arc. The most shocking part was the left side of his chest. The terrifying wound that ran through his entire chest was slowly healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Under the cover of the gray energy, it was like an ant crawling, strange and terrifying. The missing piece of flesh at his waist was also wriggling. Monster! A real monster! Clang! Dejong had no time to dodge. The collision between the sky arc and the giant golden stick numbed his arm instantly. Dejong's expression changed continuously, and his wings trembled slightly. For the first time, he felt fear in his heart. It was too terrifying. In a one-on-one fight, he did not care about the great sage at all. In his opinion, without the help of the bull demon, with his reborn strength, it would be easy to kill the great sage. But things did not go as he wished. He had been dodging the great sage's attacks and had not fought a real battle. But after a real hand-to-hand fight, Dejong suddenly realized that he might not necessarily be able to defeat the great sage. Especially at this moment, the great sage in front of him was completely unfathomable. He was as terrifying as a demon. Unfathomable. Is he a warrior or not? This question appeared in Dejong's mind, and his expression was uncertain. With the injuries suffered by the great sage, let alone death, he should be seriously injured and unable to fight. But the great sage in front of him seemed to feel no pain, and his strength did not decrease at all. Instead, it was more terrifying than before the battle, and he could not resist. No, it's not that he has become stronger. Dejong's face was pale, and he gritted his teeth. It's that I have become weaker. How could a battle not consume energy? As the astral power continued to be consumed, as the battle progressed, Dejong's strength was declining at an insignificant rate. However, the great sage was like a machine. The more he fought, the stronger he became. Driven by the gray energy, he had completely turned into a demon of slaughter. He was invincible, and the most terrifying thing was that he seemed to have an immortal body. He could not be killed. The great sage's overall physique was already the best in the fighting spirit world. Now that he had this characteristic of being immortal, how could he fight? Unless I directly destroy his body otherwise. If I keep recovering, his strength will not change, but my strength will continue to decline, and the gap between us will become smaller and smaller. Dejong's expression was ugly. That being said, how could he destroy it? He had already used his most powerful attack, but what could he do against the great sage? The physique was too terrifying. It was a 2-on-2 battle. Both sides were evenly matched. To be precise, the balance between Dejong and the great sage was slowly tilting towards the great sage's side. On the other hand, Gu Xing, who had broken out of seclusion and had greatly improved her strength, further expanding her advantage and beating the bull demon until he could not fight back. It was hard to imagine that Gu Xing's strength had improved so much in such a short time. One must know that in the battle between the bull demon and Gu Xing in the witch tribe's territory, Gu Xing was the one who lost. Today their strengths were completely opposite. Very strong. Gu Xing was indeed worthy of being a rare super genius of the ancient race. But whether it was Witch Emperor Dejong, the great sage, the bull demon, or Gu Xing, none of them noticed that there was another figure in the distance. He was suspended in the air among the tall treetops, with layers of golden light and shadow. His fiery red eyes were filled with anger, madness, and even more complicated emotions. The great sage. The real great sage. To be precise, he was the great sage who used the earth pillar as his body. There is indeed a demon hiding in my body. The great sage's eyes were cold, and his fists were tightly clenched, blue veins popping out. That day, he had entered the forbidden land of the demon race out of curiosity and was summoned by a powerful force into the deepest part of the graveyard. In the end, he did not see anything, only felt a terrifying force descending, and then, nothing. When he regained consciousness, he was already outside the graveyard, as if some memory in his mind had disappeared. After that, he kept feeling that his body was a little strange, but he could not explain why. It was only when his body died and his soul left his body that the lost memory slowly recovered. He had been completely tricked. Chapter 1578. Struggle. Right now, the great sage was struggling with his thoughts. His position. Which side should he stand on? Should he help his physical body? That was a body that had been possessed by a demon. To the great sage, this was simply a humiliation. But to help the witch Emperor Dijiang, he also couldn't do it, because from the beginning, he had already regarded Dijiang as his greatest enemy. Unable to make a choice, the great sage chose to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. However, there was another reason why the great sage didn't dare to act rashly. That was, he wanted to, but he didn't have the strength. He had less than a tenth of his strength left. Damn it! Clenching his fists, a cold light flashed across the great sage's eyes. He was very angry, but so what? Right now, not to mention which Emperor Jiang, the demon that possessed his physical body was even weaker than him and Gu Sheng. His soul was severely injured. His body was only formed by the earth pillar. His strength was greatly reduced. He was no longer the all-powerful expert who ruled the entire Yao clan and laughed proudly in the Douling world. The current him, he was in dire straits. He was at a loss. As his anger continued to rise, as he felt his body's strength weakening, the great sage fell into an uncontrollable state of mind. He kept trembling. As his negative emotions rose, the physical body formed by the earth pillar felt like it was about to collapse. However, suddenly, a figure appeared in the great sage's mind. A figure that made his state of mind extremely complicated. The human Lin Feng. It was him who caused him to lose his physical body. Now, he was neither a demon nor a ghost. He was like a wandering ghost. However, it was him who saved him in the earth pillar's space. He saved his last bit of soul and kept a sliver of hope. His feelings towards Lin Feng were very complicated. To the great sage, the one who left the deepest impression in his heart wasn't which Emperor Jiang, but this ordinary human. Weak and unreachable human. The great sage gritted his teeth, his eyes deep. He had always looked down on humans. In his opinion, humans had no other merits other than being a little smart. That weak body that could be blown away by a gust of wind, that race that only knew how to play tricks and didn't have the heart of a martial artist. No wonder they lived like ants, struggling at death's door. Only the Yao clan was truly the strongest race. On the other hand, he possessed the strongest body in the Dou spirit world, as well as an extraordinary aptitude that no other race possessed. He was a great sage, a super genius of the demon race that was hard to come by in 1,000,000,000 years, and that human of the ancient race as well. The great sage's eyes were deep as he looked at Gu Sheng from afar. His heart was filled with shock. Although he and Gu Sheng had never truly met, he and Bull Demon were sworn brothers. Back then, during the battle for the Earth Pillar in the Sorcerer Realm, he had met Gu Sheng once. After that, he also knew that Gu Sheng had been defeated by Bull Demon. But after 3 days of separation, I have a whole new level of respect for you. With Gu Sheng's current strength, she could actually defeat Bull Demon. Unbelievable! Why can they do it but I can't? The great sage's eyes shone brightly. His competitive spirit surged once more. Even if he had nothing, he still had his pride. His pride would never allow him to lower his head. In the great sage's dictionary, there was no such thing as sympathy. He only believed in strength, and in courage. He believed that he could defeat all the strong. Even puny humans can have such great strength. Why can't I, the great sage, do it? They don't have strong bodies either, but so what? The path of martial arts doesn't only rely on the body. The great sage's dazed eyes slowly cleared. At this moment, this failure allowed him to understand and comprehend many things. He was too conceited. However, nothing was necessarily a bad thing when pushed to the extreme. Only when one was extremely conceited and prideful could one be as stubborn as the great sage. He would never admit defeat. He would never admit defeat even if he died. He would never admit that he was weaker than other martial artists. Whoosh! The great sage's face was completely focused. His aura was completely different now. He had thought it through. One day, I will make a comeback. The great sage's eyes shone with determination. All of you, wash your necks and wait. Gritting his teeth, the great sage suddenly turned around and bolted like the wind. The loss of his physical body this time, this painful defeat, was a nightmare for him. It was a heavy blow. However, it was like a spring that kept being pressed down. As long as the spring didn't break, then one day it would rebound strongly. Stronger than before, stronger than before. The great sage left. No one knew where he went. The great sage didn't have many friends. He only had Bull Demon. With his personality, he naturally wouldn't tell anyone because he was the great sage. On the other side, the battle was getting fiercer and fiercer. Dijiang couldn't do anything to the great sage. With his terrifying physique and undying characteristics, unless he had a powerful attack that could severely injure the great sage in a short period of time, he would be exhausted to death. To a certain extent, the great sage was weaker than the original great sage. He lacked his innate battle instincts, the heart of a martial artist, and the application of various daos. The great sage's body contained various abilities, including daos. However, the gray energy wasn't the true owner of this body. Naturally, it couldn't unleash 100% of its strength. However, from another point of view, the great sage was stronger than the original great sage. In fact, he was much stronger. If it was the original great sage who fought against Shaman Emperor Dijiang today, he would have been defeated long ago. However, although the great sage was at a disadvantage at first, he slowly turned the situation around and even forced Shaman Emperor Dijiang to flee. Everything had its weakness. From Dijiang's anxious expression, one could tell that he wasn't having a good time. He was in a dilemma. Leave? Where could he go? Even if he could get rid of the great sage, it was only temporary. If he wanted to help the trapped shaman tribe, he would have to face the great sage sooner or later. This was an unsolvable situation. Moreover, if he left Gu Xing behind, he would lose such a powerful friend in the future. The disadvantages outweighed the advantages. He could only wait. He could only endure. Shaman Emperor Zhang's eyes sparkled. He gritted his teeth and glanced around. He already had a plan in his heart. He still had a chance. And that was Gu Xing. The battle was getting more and more intense. Gu Xing had completely suppressed the Bull Demon King. Compared to that day, the situation seemed to have reversed. Back then, Gu Xing had been suppressed by Bull Demon and was defeated in the end. However, today Bull Demon had no other way to deal with Gu Xing, who had made up for his biggest weakness. Boom, boom, boom. Axe after axe came down, but Gu Xing didn't take it head-on. He either dodged or used the water origin energy to deflect the attack, turning the force into nothing. Gu Xing had the absolute advantage. Bull Demon was covered in injuries. He had used up a lot of his energy, and he didn't have much astral origin energy left. As time passed, the situation was getting worse. The newborn calf wasn't afraid of the tiger. Gu Xing was about to create a miracle. The ancient tribe was weak in one-on-one battles. Celestial spirit masters weren't good at one-on-one battles. However, today, Gu Xing had used a carefree victory to tell all the warriors that a celestial spirit master was no less powerful than a heaven-level warrior. Even Bull Demon, who was ranked second in the demon tribe, would be defeated by him. What kind of ability was that? The battle lasted for 2 hours. A prolonged battle. The great sage and Di Jiang chased after each other, and both of them had used up a lot of energy. However, the great sage was in a much better state than Di Jiang. Gray energy surged out continuously, replenishing his energy. On the other hand, the great sage's face was getting paler and paler. He had used up more than 50% of his energy. The comparison of their strengths had already shown a trend of one side being weaker, while the other was stronger. If it weren't for Di Jiang's speed being too fast, he would have been defeated by the great sage. With the sky arc and absolute speed, no matter who he faced, Di Jiang was in an invincible situation. In fact, he had never been defeated before. Although he couldn't kill the great sage, if he wanted to leave, the great sage wouldn't be able to stop him, even if he had exhausted all his energy. The anxiety on Di Jiang's face wasn't because of himself, but because of the sorcerer tribe's current situation. Being schemed against by the demonic beast race again, Shi Juin's performance disappointed him. Even though he had rushed over as soon as he received Huda's message, he was still a step too late. He was intercepted. Swoosh! Di Jiang dodged the great sage's attack again, but he didn't counterattack. Instead, he looked at the bull demon from the corner of his eyes. At this moment, the bull demon's situation was quite bad. Even though Gu Xing's energy was also greatly depleted, she wasn't injured. On the other hand, the bull demon was heavily injured. After repeated attacks and exhaustion, the bull demon's combat strength was less than 30%. Hua! Voila! A huge waterfall bloomed like an orchid, but in an instant it spun violently. The terrifying centrifugal force spun the bull demon until he was dizzy, and the space around him changed. The bull demon was enraged, and the giant axe in his hand slashed down fiercely, as if it was splitting the heavens and splitting the earth. But Gu Xing didn't get close. The huge waterfall was filled with extreme gentleness, and it wrapped around the giant axe. Not only did it release its strength, but it also silently endured it. The waterfall was split into two, and the huge amount of stellar energy sizzled. But in the blink of an eye, the waterfall returned to its normal state, shapeless and formless. The characteristic of water was to use softness to overcome strength. At this moment it was fully unleashed. One axe after another, and the bull demon was indeed very strong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to drag the battle to this state. Even though Gu Xing had the absolute advantage, he didn't dare to get close, because he would be counterattacked by the bull demon at any moment. He only wanted to exhaust the bull demon to death. But in the end, things never went according to plan. Swoosh! At this moment, an extremely bright white light suddenly appeared. Just as the bull demon's axe was about to fall, and he was about to exhaust his energy, the condensed murderous aura, accompanied by terrifying strength, shot out in this almost sealed space. Which Emperor Di Jiang? His eyes were filled with murderous intent, and the arc of the sky emitted a piercing cold light. Breaking Gu Xing's space Dao was too easy for Di Jiang. No! Gu Xing's eyes widened and he cried out in shock. At this moment, the bull demon was also awakened. His eyes were as wide as lanterns, but he couldn't react in time. The cold light flashed, and it was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Swoosh! With a pair of eyes filled with shock and disbelief, the bull demon king's head flew off and fell to the ground with a bang. The bull demon was dead. Chapter 1579. It was an unexpected ending. The two most terrifying masters of the demon tribe, the great sage commander and the bull demon king, the deputy commander, intercepted the witch Emperor Jiang. It was a good plan to kill two birds with one stone. Not only could they stop the Witch Emperor Jiang from assisting the Witch Tribe army, they could also make use of his anxious state of mind to force him to reveal his flaws and severely injure or even kill him. Who would have thought that Gu Xing would suddenly appear, and he was even more powerful? Not only did he turn Di Zhang's unfavorable situation around, but he also suppressed Bull Demon one-on-one. Bull Demon? What kind of strength was this? In terms of raw power, he was even stronger than Niu Yunlei, the leader of the 4 great demon emperors. Back then, during the commander's battle, he had also defeated the great saint. It was only in the final battle that he lost to the great saint. He was one of the top 5 in the entire Douling world. But today Bull Demon was dead. He was not killed by Gu Xing, but by Witch Emperor Jiang. Gu Xing's eyes widened, and his mouth opened wide in shock. He had just shouted no when Bull Demon was killed. As a warrior, he did not like to be sneaky. Even if he was an enemy, he would not use tricks to deal with him. But this time, Bull Demon's death was beyond his expectations. Although he also wanted to kill Bull Demon, he only wanted to use his true strength to kill him and win openly, not like now. Even if he won, it would be an insult to him. Anger. A rare anger appeared on Gu Xing's face as he stared at Witch Emperor Jiang. He could not imagine that such a powerful person, a legendary existence, would use such a dirty method to deal with an enemy, a sneak attack. Moreover, he used the sneak attack when he and Bull Demon were in the middle of a fierce battle to frame him as heartless and unjust. Whoosh! Their eyes met. Gu Xing was furious, but Di Jiang was surprisingly calm, except for his pale face. "Let's go," Witch Emperor Jiang said without hesitation. After he finished speaking, he left like a gust of wind. Gu Xing's expression was unsettled as he clenched his teeth. Although he despised Shaman Emperor Jiang's actions, they were a temporary alliance after all. He could only forcefully swallow his anger. Whoosh! Whoosh! The 2 figures left one after the other, leaving behind a headless corpse and a great sage glowing with intense gray energy. He didn't give chase. Even though he no longer had a soul, even though he resembled a puppet, it was merely an illusion. Just as the great sage had said, there was a devil living within his body. Devils were bloodthirsty, vicious, and would do anything. However, this did not mean that they did not have intelligence. Whoosh! His figure flickered, and his eyes flashed as he looked at the Bull Demon's corpse. Bzzz bzzz. The gray energy was so dense that it circled around the Bull Demon's body like lightning. It was as if a fire had been lit. A strange scene suddenly appeared. The great sage's hands touched the Bull Demon's body, causing it to seem as if it had caught fire. The gray energy dimmed, then faded, then reappeared like a flame rising slowly. It was the same gray energy. The same aura of death appeared strangely. It wasn't a gift but a lure. The great sage had drawn out the devil hidden within the Bull Demon's body. No one knew that there had been another expert besides the great sage who had entered the cemetery that day, the Bull Demon. Whoosh! A gray light flashed through the bull's eyes. At that moment it was as if he'd come back from the dead. An inexplicable terror enveloped the area. Clap! The great sage waved his hands, then clapped them together. In an instant, the Bull Demon's head and body were pieced together, like broken porcelain being forcefully glued together. The gray energy enveloped the Bull Demon's body, like a needle and thread, trying to sew up the 2 halves of the wound. But bzzz. Bzzz. Flashing white light, like maggots, destroyed the healing process of the gray energy. The pure and powerful power of heaven and earth suppressed the gray energy. Although the gray energy surging out of the Bull Demon was relatively strong, it still couldn't heal the fatal wound. The great sage's gaze was deep, but his expression didn't change much. He raised his hands, and together with the head and the gray energy, the Bull Demon was lifted up like a stone statue. The great sage's gray eyes looked in the direction that the Shaman Emperor Jiang had left, as if unwilling to give up. He turned his head abruptly and left with the bull demon. Leading the way, the shaman Emperor Jiang scampered. Although he'd used up a lot of energy, he didn't hesitate at all. He'd always placed the safety of the shaman tribe as his top priority. He wasn't afraid of the great sage's pursuit. He believed that as long as the great sage wasn't stupid, he'd know that his plan had been foiled. 2 against 1, the great sage had no chance of winning at all. But at the same time, even if he and Gu Xing worked together, the possibility of destroying the great sage's undying body was minuscule. Their opponent was too mysterious. Di Zhang's eyes flickered, but his heart was filled with thoughts. He hadn't gained nothing from this battle. At least he vaguely understood what had happened, and had some understanding of the great sage's gray energy. He believed that as long as he had enough time, he'd definitely find a way to crack the secret of the great sage's undying body. He had this confidence because he was the shaman Emperor Jiang, the most powerful existence in the Douling world. At the same time, he was also the most experienced warrior. After 2 great shaman wars, he'd seen everything. But those who walk different paths can't work together. Shaman Emperor, farewell. Behind him, Gu Xing's voice echoed in his ears. She'd already disappeared. He didn't look back, nor did he care about Gu Xing's departure. Di Zhang's eyes were deep, and his speed didn't change at all. He naturally understood why Gu Xing had left, and there was no need to force her to stay. As the saying goes, a melon forcefully picked is not sweet. If Gu Xing wanted to leave, he couldn't make her stay. But even if he had to do it again, he'd still do it. He didn't regret it. In fact, he'd already decided to do this from the beginning, because this was his only chance. Breaking through the encirclement was the best way. Moreover, he'd let the demon tribe go for wool and come home shorn, losing a general. It was too worth it. Winner takes all. This was war, not a battle between warriors. War had always been about conspiracies and trick. As long as they could win, what couldn't they do? Di Jiang never thought of himself as a good person. As long as it was beneficial to the shaman tribe, he'd do it no matter how vicious or unbearable it was. Because he was the shaman emperor. The interests of the shaman tribe were far more important than his personal glory. In the southern region. Wow, the shaman tribe has started to counterattack again. That's right. How can the shaman tribe swallow such a big loss? That's true, but the demon tribe is too strange. One moment they were bluffing, and the next moment they were pretending to be weak. They've just won a battle, and now they're suddenly silent. I don't know what they're doing. It's really strange. In this great shaman war, it feels like the shaman tribe and the demon tribe have changed roles. Yes, it's too funny. We won. Yeah, we won again. I told you. As long as the shaman Emperor Jiang is here, the shaman tribe will never fall. Not long ago, the shaman tribe was schemed against by the demon tribe and suffered a big defeat. Why didn't you say that? You even swore that the shaman tribe was finished. This time, the demon tribe will definitely beat the shaman tribe when they're down. They're as negative as they can be. I didn't. All kinds of voices sounded everywhere in the southern region. The opening of the new policy made the southern region no longer completely closed off. Lin Xiaotian believed that the people of the southern region had the right to know what was going on in the outside world. At the same time, he firmly believed that the unstable factors in the southern region today were minimal under the rule of Lin Feng. Even the people's trust in Lin Feng had reached an almost blind attitude. After various investigations among the people, Lin Xiaotian was even more satisfied with his son. As the human emperor, it was easy to say that he could make the people so respectful and loyal to him that they were almost 100% loyal. Even if it were him, it would be impossible for him to do better than his son. A father was proud of his son. Seeing his son's great achievements, Lin Xiaotian was deeply proud. Lin Xiaotian did not change anything about what his son had done. Great minds think alike. The only change was the passage of time. Back then, Lin Feng had done the right thing. After all, Lin Feng had just become the ruler of the southern region. He was faced with all kinds of doubts and was even called a tyrant. He was not popular at all. However, Lin Feng had long been revered as the human emperor by the people. In the hearts of these ordinary people, Lin Feng was like a god. They did not care about what was going on in the outside world. To the people of the southern region, they only needed to believe in Lin Feng, their human emperor. As long as Lin Feng was around, they would be able to live and work in peace. They did not need to worry about any disputes in the outside world or the outcome of the shaman tribe war. Perhaps one day Feng will really be like what Shun said, when the sandpiper and clam fight, the fisherman benefits. As the shaman tribe war came to an end, both the shaman tribe and the demon tribe suffered great losses again. The southern region that was secretly accumulating strength and waiting for an opportunity to rise up and occupy half of the world. They will truly become an unshakable force in the Douling world. Feng become the real human emperor and build a great cause. Lin Xiaotian's eyes flickered and sparkled. Men had their own ambitions, and his ambition, at this moment, was to help his son achieve a great cause. In the short half a month, the Douling world had experienced one amazing battle after another. The shaman tribe was once again ambushed by the demon tribe and suffered heavy losses. However, under the leadership of the shaman emperor Jiang, the shaman tribe won 2 cities in a row despite being at an absolute disadvantage. They won 2 impeccable victories to turn the situation around and stopped suppressing the demon tribe. Although the demon tribe was defeated, they did not suffer great losses. They fought and retreated. Lam Tok T's command was quite experienced. The 2 tribes fought back and forth, neither giving in to the other. For the shaman tribe, they had to suppress the demon tribe. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. For the demon tribe, they had to go deeper into the hinterland and slowly erode the shaman tribe's strength. Right now, every inch of land was a fight, and every battle was quite important. However, these were not important to Lin Feng now. He, who had been in seclusion for a long time, finally ushered in an opportunity. He ushered in the last breakthrough before becoming a starry sky powerhouse, Peak Sage King. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.